Shall we open up our introductory episode with that
Oh,
quote?
wait. The last line.
I know, bro.
We climb our ladders together when we ask why.
Yeah.
It's,
So
capitalized.
I included that because that quote explains exactly why I feel like my involvement here makes sense.
Spider, read that again because we were just dropping in when
It's really about the last line.
That whole thing's beautiful, though.
It is.
You sound great saying it.
Let me see. He says, how can I do this?
Spider's got to read and talk at the same time.
With progressive lenses now that I'm 45. I have progressive lenses, so I have to like cock my head back.
He's going full old man here.
I know, right? Okay. Moreover, a balanced conversation about these middle rungs leads to a transfer of knowledge that can spread past the lines that divide many creative disciplines. The musician may learn from the actor who constantly ruminates about the finer details of drama and performance. The actor can learn from the painter about the emotive power of facial expressions. The painter from the designer about the potential of juxtaposing images and words. And the designer from the poet who can create warmth through the sparseness of a carefully chosen, well-placed word. We climb our ladders together when we ask why. This is so good.
It's good, yeah.
This is the perspective I've taken in PMC land in marketing. It's like, this is a thing we are all building together.
That's why there's four of us at this table.
It's something that it's interesting because it's something that I've learned from you or watched you do since we met. We met back in Tony's spot, but once we started working together, is this conversation where you would often say we like to, or we sometimes, or we think about this like, and you never ever said we, where I thought, what the fuck is he talking about? I don't believe that. It was always right. It was a true we, but you sort of took conversations that we'd had, and you and Maurice, me and Maurice, the three of us, the extended team, whatever, and you made it into a we. You sort of communicated it as a group of people working to a common goal in a very sort of effortless way, but in a way that I think was really useful to me. It was probably the genesis of our like commitment to each other in terms of like we're gonna do this thing for each other that now. You had been doing with John forever.
Yes.
And Michael had been doing with John for a minute, and you'd been doing with John, you guys for a long time.
Yeah.
You guys for a minute.
Yeah.
Me much later with Michael.
Right.
But this kind of like collective, like when you do something good, I'm going to notice it and I'm going to mention it and I'm going to, make sure that you did something good. So that you have feedback from someone you trust,
It's also about aligning goals, and the we is kind of this expansive concept. It's, it can be two, right? It can be two people. It's like the sort of minimum requirement for we. And like you, Rory and I, like there's stuff we do, but it can expand all the way out to the civilizational goals. It's like we want to reduce suffering, we want to encourage human flourishing. And so that we sort of expands, at concentric circles.
Yes.
From you out into your, your immediate group, your friends, your working group, the people you work with, whatever. And then, like like we have, like the four of us are engaged in this conversation. We're sort of committed now, and we've systematized this conversation. And then there are concentric circles that move out from us, our close homies, the sort of, the people in town we have a lot in common with, or people, and then it goes out from there. The whole pro audio community, the whole music industry, those we's are useful. It's like I think the core of it is creating a common vision or a common purpose, and I don't know.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
then
I
I
mean,
see some kid in Tel Aviv posting on John's Instagram how the low end on some track, he's just like effusive and like that's home for him. He's found it. This is a record that,
Yeah.
this is the way you're hearing low end is the way I'm hearing low end.
Well,
It's
these
like
are
that-
ideas that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or the reactions we had to the conversation where people are posting from Sweden and saying, I watched it twice.
Yes.
It's kind of absurd to me, but it's also really exciting.
It's not absurd when you think about the 22-year-old version of you, hungry for information and perspective and insight.
I rewatched it last night, and it was kind of weird watching myself tell that story, but it's true. I was like lost in the woods for a long time. So I have deep empathy for anyone.
I was lost in the woods till I met you, bro. That was only a couple of years ago.
This is.
I don't believe that fully, but
Yeah. On
Definitely in the weeds, maybe not the woods.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I was talking to my wife about that last night, which is this project of trying to. Some of us are not round pegs or square pegs. We're a little bit odd, and there isn't a hole that's ready for us to plug into, and we need to make it, or we need to create the space for it, or whatever that looks like. I run out of room on that analogy.
No,
No, I've been trying to do that my whole life.
Yeah.
And no one's really ever said that that's okay. I talked about it once in one of the conversations nights. I forgot what it was, probably the second evening. And I wish someone told me in school that it was okay, that it was simply okay that something happened because I was different. And just that simple two words.
Slow that down. Something happened because you're different, like a bad thing, a good thing. Someone picking on you because you're a weird kid. Okay.
Mostly in the negative context.
Okay.
Of you did something that seemed a little bit off to someone that was judging that position that you performed a little too early. Like they didn't think, oh, he's not like me, so that's not okay. It was he's not like me, so that's not okay. And then no teacher, no counselor, no principal, no friend would say, no, it's okay, you're different. And it's easier to think that way now as an adult because there's so many people that are like you but not like you. There's enough fringe people out there that will never be just like you. And I think about all my quote unquote weird friends. They're weird, but they're normal, meaning they function in society without a dramatic problem. But they're weird enough that there's something about them that's interesting, and that's what keeps you around them. And I would imagine that's why people would keep me around, is there's something a little bit off, but I'm also reliable.
Yeah.
Right? There's a quality about you that's weird, and there's a quality about you that's reliable and functioning. And no one ever discussed that in school. It was, you're weird.
Yeah.
You're dumb. You didn't say the right thing. You didn't do the right thing.
Yeah.
And it was too finite. So the peg analogy is actually kind of perfect for me. I relate to that a lot. I think I'm just shy of the right size peg.
I mean, different is often taken for dysfunctional.
Yeah.
You know, when people don't understand. I mean, that was my experience growing up. It was like, I am not, this isn't wrong, it's just different. You know?
Yeah, and oftentimes because it's different, the people around you don't know what to do with you, quote unquote. Like,
Sure.
what do we do with...
But that's fair too.
Yeah. And
novelty is...
Right.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, growing up, I'm reflecting on everything you're saying. I was speaking with my dad the other day. On the last conversation we had, I was speaking about how my parents were very against me becoming a designer. And I asked him, like, what was the origin of that? Like, what did that happen? You know? And he was saying, like, we went to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor, like, had nothing to say about me doing design. Like, a weird story is, like, I was so into design that in my design courses in high school, got so good at it that I was teaching my teacher how to use the tool. And that moment alone should have been enough for anyone in the school to say, you have to do this thing. Like, this is the thing. But, like, there aren't structures in place to support every kid in the class and every kid in the school.
Right.
My guidance counselor didn't know that one essential story that could have totally changed her opinion, right? And as a result, it took years for me to finally realize that in myself and, do the thing. But, in a way, it's like society saying that I'm different and weird because I'm different from the kid that's good at football and everyone knows it, or the kid that's really smart and their grades show it and therefore they know they should go to this school. It's like you don't fit into that box, and then therefore there's not enough structure to support you. But what's amazing is you grow up, you try a bunch of stuff, and the internet's amazing for this. You see that there are so many people out there that are actually doing the weird thing that you do. And that isn't a substitute for what we have, right? Which is a community ultimately, even of the four of us that can be weird and different and share those weird differences with each other. It's not a substitute for it, but it definitely helps. And so when I see people commenting or reaching out on the conversations page or on John's page or on my page or on any of our pages, like people want that. What they really want is that, acceptance of, hey, I'm different, and you see that. And in a way, to some degree, I guess I've been thinking about Freud a lot lately, but to some really deep level, they want that acknowledgement and that acceptance that they're doing the right thing.
Well, we all need our contributions to be appreciated.
Especially because there's no clear path of growth in what we're doing, as freelancers, So it's easy to get lost.
But though that story is fantastic and highly relatable, there's nothing objective about that moment where the teacher didn't acknowledge that you knew something he or she didn't know. There's no need for him to do that, because thinking about our world in mixing, if someone plays me a good mix, or I don't know this person, I listen to it and I hear a good mix, I'm like, wow, that was a great mix. And then I look up this person again and again and again and again, and it's not a great mix every other time. Who's to say that one time that you knew something more than that person makes you capable of being the teacher from here on out, right?
Yeah.
So that moment isn't an objectively defining moment of a miss in a counselor or a teacher's.
Could be. I mean, it could be if a kid has that level of curiosity where they learn that thing and they go that deep on their own, and you miss that as a teacher, you fucked up.
Yeah,
because that's the thing you're supposed to nurture.
Well, so we get to the once per episode mention of Seth Godin and his lecture or talk, which I've watched or listened to, I don't know, 5 times and shared a bunch, which is What is School For? And when you listen to that, and it's actually called Stop Stealing Dreams is what the episode, or if you search Stop Stealing Dreams, but the job of school is not to nurture Michael's ability to make you feel less alone or as an outlier. It is to create compliant drones, and we haven't updated that mission statement for schools. So I asked the principal of my daughter's school, what is school for, and the answer was she's really bright and she's got a PhD and she's very, very passionate. And I like her a lot, but the answer was not a win,
How is this possible when Ken Robinson can deliver a TED Talk about education that utterly addresses this is however many, over 10 years ago.
Yes.
The most inspired, probably the most viewed, most loved TED Talk ever, addresses this directly.
I'm going to pull rank. I'm educating 2 kids. It's a fucking nightmare. It is.
I'm just saying, if we know what to do for so long, why are we not doing it?
Well,
but that doesn't necessarily scale. That's a.
We don't
maybe
know
we don't know what to do.
We don't know what to do.
We do know we can do better.
I'm also wondering.
No question.
I'm also wondering from Michael. I think this is really relevant. Is in that moment when quote unquote your teacher should have maybe said to you, you should be teaching the course.
Oh, I wasn't looking for that.
No, of course.
I was too young.
Well, that's what I'm. Well, that's what I'm trying to get at.
I don't want this level of responsibility.
No, but that's
you gonna pay me, bitch.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Do you remember?
Michael's like, I'll send you an invoice.
Yeah.
Do you remember the reaction in that moment? How you took it, and did you get any benefit of knowing that you knew better in that moment? Was that enough at that time to say, "Oh, I learned something"?
I mean,
I didn't need him to tell me.
I knew that I knew better, in certain way. I knew some shortcuts. I knew some options. I knew ways of achieving the outcome they were instructing the class on, how to do that quicker at the same fidelity. But I didn't know enough about design. I think looking back on the situation, what I was reflecting on is that I was the most different in my class. Everyone else was there because it was an art class for the most part, and you could just take it and get through it. And I was like in it because my sister had Photoshop, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, and I want to be great at it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a criticism on the education system, which Spider mentioned. I mean, like, it would have been even better for a student's outcome, thinking about the individual, had they recognized, wow, there's a lot of energy there. What can we do to, can we give him more difficult projects, or
Create some room.
Yeah, create some room.
But
And,
in a classroom with an unfavorable pupil teacher ratio, which is most,
Yep.
a kid with a lot of energy is a liability.
Right.
They're not. The idea is you get through the lesson or the day with the minimum amount of friction, and those kids are just like the kid who has learning disability or like my daughter has dyslexia. My older daughter, they take too much energy. They ask questions. I remember, I had a really bad school experience. I really, I don't want to sort of go through it all, but basically effortless, A's until I was 12, until I went to high school. Always top of my class without ever opening a book. Super easy, never challenged, and not because I'm super bright, just it was easy. And then I got to high school and our equivalent, and you have to work. You have to actually have to open a book to achieve. And immediately sort of decided, I like this teacher, I don't like that guy, I don't respect him, I like her. Just stupid teenage stuff. But I remember watching, I had a good aptitude, not really good really, but compared to my peers for math. And in our education system in Ireland at the time, we had two streams. There was what they call pass and honours. But basically honours math was fairly challenging and pass was very easy. It was quite a gulf. And my honours math teacher, I remember watching him over and over and over punish this kid called Mark in my class, who was kind of hyperactive and kind of endlessly questioning. He was kind of that kid who would say, but why? Because it just is. But why? He was looking for deeper.
You mean he was a curious kid?
He was a curious kid. He was fucking awesome. He was a good friend of mine. He was a wild kid. I mean, he was full of energy. But I remember watching my teacher treat him so poorly and just being like, fuck you, fuck this, I'm going to pass. I'm going to the lower level so I don't have to see this. And I went to the lower level and got, an A1, which is 95, at the time it was 95% or more, phoning it in. And it was a complete waste of my potential. Right. Maybe I was only a B student I don't know what I was, but I definitely squandered my potential as some kind of misguided fuck you to this guy. But that was really common in my school experience, was that kid who was a fountain of energy and curiosity, as Spider says, was a liability in that class. I mean, that teacher was really, he should have been fired. He didn't even make the cut. But
did you have anyone to talk to at the time about this?
No, my parents had no grasp of what education could be, like none. There was something that we talked about some in the conversation, but something that was massively missing in my life in Ireland was role models. Anyone doing anything challenging, interesting, or dangerous. I didn't have them. There was no one I could point to. There was some interesting people who were deadbeats. So that kind of, my pot smoking uncle with his dysfunctional marriage.
Sure.
Peace out to Vince there. There was some good ideas, and he would bring you a record or a book that was curious. But in terms of functional adults who were at or near their limits of ability or understanding, it just didn't exist.
Was it merely an example that would expand your imagination for what was possible, for what you could do, or was it the insights, like the the perspective and the wisdom gathered from a lifetime of curiosity and unique experiences.
Well, my dad left school at the age of 12. My mom to work, and his younger brothers and sisters got to finish out high school and went to college, or equivalent of high school. My mom finished a high school level education, and that was it. And there was no one, in my life doing dangerous creative work or challenging academic work or anything really that I could point to and say, I'm not like the other kids. John's experience of being, I'm an outlier. I feel weird. I feel different. I feel I've got questions or I've got intuitions that are, other kids want to kick ball and they're good with that. And they're not less than for that. They're just different. So I've got intuitions, but there's no one I can look to who's a scaled version of me.
You weren't linking up to anyone ahead of you.
I was in the vacuum of space within my own family, I was a persistent pain in the ass because I'm asking questions or pushing points with my kind of, teenage naivety or whatever, that just to sort of explore my own boundaries, because I had no idea what was possible or what was, there was, like I say, there was just no role model at all, I had things in common with my dad, genetically and experientially, but in terms of like someone who's me further down the line, I didn't see that.
Did
in my
you
life.
feel like fish out of water, like born into the wrong situation? Did you feel alienated?
Did I, or
did you feel misplaced?
Do I wear?
No. I mean, but in terms of your experience, then did you feel separate?
I felt this outsized ambition to explore, and we talked about
escape.
No, not escape. We talked about an experience recently where you and I were bringing up stuff that was more than someone else in our company wanted to bite off at dinner that we had. And that sort of was my experience.
Gotcha.
That like, I want to sort of sit in these difficult questions, not because I'm smart, but just because I'm curious. And finding other people being like, why would you ask that question?
Right.
Why, like, isn't Coronation Street on TV? Can't we just watch that?
Yeah.
Like, why are you rocking the boat now?
Yeah.
John pouring Chablis on Mike.
I love that.
So, John, you, I relate to this entirely. I had very profound sort of mismatch as a kid. I felt very much a fish out of water in the sort of psychological, in the DSM kind of sense.
Yeah.
Like a fish out of water. Did you feel this way too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, but I had to participate in all of the groups to figure out what I was going to fit into.
So you got a chance to experiment?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I
What
did
you mean?
not.
You played sports, but you weren't good at them, or like what do you
Played
mean?
sports, was pretty good at them.
Football John.
But always got made fun. Ooh, can we just edit that?
Football John
Oh my God.
staying in.
Um,
Don't
This
worry,
was
we're
Rogan,
posting.
we would put up a photo.
Yeah, no, we have to post the championship winning catch and all the highlights, bro.
I guess I'm one of those people, if I'm reflecting, and I think this is probably valuable to discuss. I can be good at a lot of things.
Yes.
If I put my mind to it, I'm pretty competitive. So when you're competitive,
Just to note that when you were talking about being that outlier kid, in my mind, I'm going, yeah, but you're fucking good at shit. Like I was thinking, like, yeah, you kind of might have felt an outlier, but you're really good at normie shit too.
Well-
like you're good at plugging in.
Yes.
I see that in you.
that's a skill that
Yeah.
was developed but it would be weird because you'd go to football practice and the kids would make fun of me for being a musician. And then I go to the musician crowd and they would be like, wait, you play football too? So it's this kind of pendulum swinging and acrobatic balancing act where you don't actually fit in because no one fully wants you to belong. They just think you're decent. There's a very decent mediocreness to this attitude. There's no greatness
Did you
being
feel
found.
rejection, or were you proud of your outsider status?
Both.
Yeah.
I think it's.
I know.
How can you have one without
Yeah.
the other?
It's the same.
I always, you asked Rory if you wanted to escape from it. I always wanted to leave. So everything I was in, I always couldn't wait for it to be over. I feel that way still now. Like when I'm watching a movie, even if the movie's great, kind of can't wait for the end. I can't, this is a really weird thing to admit out loud, but I constantly can't wait for the end of things.
I love that you're admitting this. This
feels like a
super
great
interesting to
therapy
me.
session right now.
No,
love it.
No, this is not
in a
therapy.
great way.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't think that way about is when I mix a record. And I think that's the full escape. And it was when I found that that skill.
Full immersion?
That was the full immersion of self, of understanding, oh, actually I'm good at this. I like doing it. I like the process. I love the time I
And
spend.
I'm not counting the seconds until it's over.
I don't.
So can I just to go full fucking therapist on it?
Yeah.
Can I ask
Full Dr. Katz.
Let's imagine that you're doing something that, and I somewhat sort of share this ability to do lots of things reasonably well. So you're in these roles where you can do it to a level where other people think, "Oh, John's good at whatever," it doesn't matter. But there's a sort of an overhead to that. There's a cost to you personally where you're doing it and you're playing ball or theater class, whatever, to a level that everyone feels like, yeah, John's one of us or whatever. But there's a cost to you, and that at the end of that you're like, okay, now I can go back to being John.
Yeah.
And for you so far, you found that in making records.
Yeah, making records, but specifically the isolated part of mixing, kind of alone. That's kind of the thing. I do like.
Wow.
We were talking earlier about kind of feedback from collaborators, and Michael started this off discussing that, how he would come into the studio and be like, oh, there's a different person here every day, and how exciting that is. That is something that I value, and I do like that pushback and that kind of free fall that can come with a bunch of opinions and insights. But I really relate to the isolation, because it's exhausting to have to fit in and have to maneuver in the room. And I think that's why I was curious about Michael's reaction to his teacher not commenting on that he knew better, thinking about my time with Tony, with my mentor, and thinking all the times that I thought I knew better, right? It's irrelevant knowing that you knew better or not. It's irrelevant. It's in that moment where you think you know better, you get to try that later on your own time. So yes, if a high school teacher were to have said it's okay and pushed me towards and nurturing my creative outlets a bit,
challenging you.
And challenging me and creating more headroom. Yes, maybe I would have been further along in my sort of self-esteem earlier, but
Can we just pause and just fucking cry for a second? Because this shit is fucking real.
It's real.
Seriously, this is real.
Yeah, but the point of this of doing this and admitting it is to say that it doesn't matter when it works out. If it works out, acknowledge that it worked out. Like, I'm a little bit later in my development because I spent so many years on my own, locked in a studio, while all my friends were out at parties, getting laid, doing drugs, doing whatever they were doing. I was in the studio practicing to get really good at something, because it was the first time I felt this tangible, feasible coolness that I would fit in, because someone would like that I was good at this, and then they can use me for it. And then I can dictate that relationship and say, okay, cool. You can use me for this, and some of us will become friends, but I also know when to draw that line and say, no, you're using me for this, and that's all you're going to get.
So value gave you more control, more freedom.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's really interesting. So there was a kind of an alignment between your natural ability and your natural joy that came from figuring this stuff out and being good at it, and then the external sort of perception of it.
Yeah.
With the belief that you're good at it.
Yeah, and I wish, like Michael was discussing, I do wish that someone said it early on. I mean, I remember I have a specific moment kind of similar to yours, but on the positive side where someone did react strongly, which is my high school band director, Ralph Caserta, who's so special to me because one time he pulled me over in the hall and he was like, "What are you doing after school today?" I was like, "Oh, I got football practice, then I got pit orchestra, and then I have drama class, and I had all these things after school." And he said, without hesitation, he said, "Pick one of those things and become the fucking master at it." And he cursed. Like he said that as a high school teacher. And that afternoon, I quit the football team. Kind of gave my coach the middle finger because he fucking
Kinda.
Yeah, I did, because I guess I can say this here. He called me gay.
Wow.
And it was really weird because I wasn't, but I had a lot of friends that were, and I actually kind of thought like, wait, maybe this is a thing that's possible, right? So someone calls you that because you're quitting football team. So he's bullying you.
Wow.
And then, yeah, that was hardcore.
That's some old school shit right there.
Old school shit. And then I went to pit orchestra practice, and I loved it. I was like playing timpani at the time. I was playing percussion. That was tight. And I quit drama because I wasn't fucking good at it. You know, like I realized in that class. So in that time, I picked the one thing that I was the best at that time. And he said it, and that stuck with me. It still sticks with me now. When I talked to you earlier before we got on the mics, talking about how I don't really want to do much more pop music right now. It's not because I don't like pop music, but where we are now with like the same song being created over and over and over again with loud, dense, over the top productions, it's like I don't respond emotionally to that. So I'm not the best at that. Like, let's give that to the person that's the best at it and give me a bit of a more nuanced, rhythmic, dynamic production and song and the R&B, hip hop.
Yes.
You know, and I'm trying to settle myself into that lane of understanding what I'm the best at. Still, I constantly am doing that. I don't think I'm inadequate at pop music. I just don't necessarily feel as much from it.
Yeah, I think you're really good at pop music, but I think if I had to, I was just as you were saying that, because we've had this sort of riff for a minute, you and I talking about this, why are we all working on the same song, sort of seemingly every week? I feel like I've mastered the same song 100 times.
Everyone's trying to converge on the same record. It
Yeah,
seems like.
and if I had to score that song on melodic interest, it's like a 4 out of 10. It's not awful. It's a Z B-side. You know, it's solid. It's competent.
Yeah, but he didn't put it out.
He didn't put it out. You know, which is why we love fucking Anton, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what separates the men from the boys, or the whatever the appropriate women from the girls. I've never said that. Wow, I'm so struck by like so much of what you're saying.
No,
And,
this dichotomy between this teacher, guidance counselor, and this coach.
Yeah.
And like one dude is saying choose and the other one's giving you shit for choosing. It's like such a...
But that's why I was so curious about Michael's, what he felt in that moment, because I have a genuine reaction of what I felt in that moment, and I don't blame them for it. We kind of went off on a education tangent there, and I kind of wanted to come back to this where, I mean, you're successful, right? You do something you love. You've rebuilt it recently to be more what you love, and I have done the same a few times. I've done it probably 3 or 4 times. You're probably on your second time, maybe your third time.
Refactoring, they call that in tech.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've refactored.
I don't like that word.
I like,
I've,
but
I've
there's
never heard it before, but I don't like
We're never
it.
using it again.
It's the worst.
That's
too cold for it.
situation to ever.
That sounds like an IKEA product. Like no,
But
not feeling that
with
at
a
all.
U somewhere.
Yeah.
But I can't blame. I mean, I can see the science class that I got called out for turning red because I said something that I thought was actually really smart and no one understood. So instead, they just pointed fun at my face turning red because I turn red when I speak out in public. Like that's a simple fact about myself and my complexion, that I turn red when I speak out, right? I'm not embarrassed by my thought most of the time. I mean, you can argue that
you're
I
owning
do.
it. You're saying it.
Yeah, I'm saying it.
But you have a physiological reaction.
Yeah, and I wasn't an outspoken kid in school, so when I did, I was pretty sure I knew what I was talking about.
Yes.
So to get called out, again, can think about those moments, but I can't put blame on that teacher for how she handled it. Because like you said, there's 30 other kids in the class that she has to maintain allegiance, and less friction. And if I'm going to be the odd one out, let me be it. But I was fortunate enough where this, I think it's more relevant to now and people that are kind of in our age group, is I can reflect on that and grow from it and remember those moves that dictated how things were to go.
It's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, narratives of people overcoming things are so important to other people than overcoming things.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so many of the narratives we hear are narratives of victimization. And, so for people to talk about, something profound to you and your development, and to talk about it openly and then be deliberate about framing it in terms of how you overcame it, I think is really important for people to think about, like what they're putting out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, like we started this conversation with, I'm stoked with the differences that I have and that I can share with my peers that I'm close with. Like, that's why we're all friends. If we were all the same and numb, we wouldn't really have anything to discuss or to talk about. And I'm not saying we're the most interesting people in the world. By no means do I think that. I think I listen to people that are 100 times more interesting to me. And that's what keeps me interested in them. But I don't think that if they met me, they wouldn't think that I'm minorly interesting. Like, I could probably hang. So that itself is because you're different. There's something special about that. I don't think everybody has the same story, and I don't think everyone should share the same story. And I think, though, now when it comes to mentorship and finding your place kind of in our world and the audio community, that's what thrives, is the difference in sound. It's like, oh, that person's doing this? Oh, I noticed that. And that's not really, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's not really reinforced by the narratives that kind of these gear companies and audio schools and, other educational forums, gear sluts, are really presenting. They're not allowing us to have nuanced, deep, long-form thought. We're being told what to do, and we pick A or B instead of coming out with it.
Well, we're being told how it was done.
Sure.
Right.
We're not thinking how it could be done.
There's so many,
so much
there's
there.
so many sort of mechanisms, but the underlying sort of drive is towards this homogeneous sort of center of the bell curve, in whatever genre, pop, rock, whatever it is. People are hip hop. I was working on a hip hop track the other day. That really, it was for an artist I've mastered stuff for before. It was a really good track. It had attitude. It had a swing. It had something, and sonically, it just wasn't. There was something keeping me from connecting. It just every time I rolled it, it just was pushing me away and not in a way that was useful. It wasn't. So I wasn't feeling it. Was struggling and was like, fuck it. Title hip hop playlist. I'm just gonna like.
Yeah.
Not the reference thing, because I really despise that, but more
It's
like
a reset,
more like
reframing.
I was looking for inspiration, really.
Yeah.
And I think the technical term is dog shit. There was a J. Cole track that I liked, and there was one other that I could stand to listen to, and then there was 18 or 20 that were just fucking, and I like good hip hop. It was, but sonically it was awful. And, but this drive towards this, sort of, like I say, the center of the bell curve, what other people are doing, the idea that everyone is using the isotope tonal balance thing. So
I've never used that before. Am I supposed to?
No, you're not supposed
How does that?
to.
What is that?
You're making the tracks that other people are trying to tonal balance to. Okay. It is tonal balance is a kind of a trick spectrum analyzer that basically curve matching. Yeah. But it's very elegant, and it's sort of level agnostic, which is really nice. And I've used it to get a viewpoint on something.
Sure. Oh, nice, yeah.
It's actually useful because sometimes a traditional kind of spectrum analyzer is a lot of information. There's a lot of shit bouncing around. And, the difference between a track you love and a track you hate the sound of is often...
Doesn't look that different.
It doesn't look that different, right?
Yeah.
The tonal balance thing is actually well put together in terms of how it demonstrates those differences, but within a kind of a band. Anyway, but this drive towards sort of this uniform thing, which is why we're ending up mastering or mixing the same song over and over, or seemingly the same song with the same lyrics, the same kind of this thing we talked about last week, which is this kind of slightly aloof, slightly dispassionate kind of, detached thing. No open declaration of emotion or feeling, or everything is sort of couched in, and a little at one remove,
Well, what are the incentives there? I mean, you have to assume that the goal is to make money, is to build a career.
What do you mean?
Right, an
making
income
art, bro?
stream. Well, that's
of course, yeah.
I mean,
I'm just messing.
art is easy in the sense that you can hit record and do anything.
Splatter paint on a canvas.
Yeah,
Call it art.
but to make money, to have a career, to have a team, have careers, and you sort of have to go to where the money is, right? So if you have everybody shooting toward this sort of lowest common denominator, I mean,
it
makes sense.
As you're saying this, like what came to mind was this very tall, sort of pointed mountain, and someone is at the top of that mountain, and other people watched him or her get there, and they saw that he or she took step after step, and they were wearing these boots and had this, walking stick, or whatever fucking, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
It's a walking stick.
Yeah, walking stick. Yeah, it sounds like
cane.
an old cane thing. Whatever, hiking, fucking.
You're talking about an ice pick, like alpine.
No,
the alpine, like mountaineering.
Whatever accoutrement of hiking
mountaineering
that they had,
accoutrement.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they watch this guy or girl's techniques, and they say, "Okay, well, I'm going to do that." But the problem is with this little mountain is that there's only room at the top for 3 or 4 people to stand. Like
Right.
you look at Everest, it's not a fucking car park up there. It's it's
a
the
Mount
size of
Rushmore. It's a Mount Rushmore of basic archetypes.
it's the size of the dinner table right now.
But I mean, Spider's point is really interesting because the incentive to recreate for the purpose of making money, right? That's the record label.
Familiarity is the number one
Yes.
reason why people like songs,
Right.
and new music,
Right. Until something different hits. And
but it's familiar enough.
see, that's where I'm gonna go a little bit.
Gautier
Right.
was familiar enough.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great example. But I was thinking more the top 10 of the Hot 100 was Katy Perry, Ariana Grande, Ed Sheeran, Justin Bieber for a bit, and then all of a sudden Drake comes in. All of a sudden there's a Kendrick feature on a record, and that has shown us a new frontier, right? So now, if you look at the Hot 100, I did today, actually, and the top 10 is 9 out of 10 are hip hop records, right?
Yes.
So we know it can shift, but now you have a bunch of pop songwriters trying to make hip hop records where the 808s just don't feel right? So when we're talking about hearing the same song over and over, I should clarify that I'm not saying it's in a pop context. It can also be in a hip hop, trap, country. It's all repetitive and it's all being remade because
Popular music.
It's popular music, but yes, but at the same time, there's different genres of popular music, right? Jazz was popular; it's not popular now. It's what was popular is not always going to be popular. So we have to leave some headroom for the ability to change what's popular.
Yeah, but it doesn't change that much.
Sure, but that's okay.
Like you don't wake up the next morning and it's now we're doing Glenn Miller throwback.
I mean,
You know what I mean?
I mean, kind of all about that bass.
I mean,
What's a Glenn Miller throwback?
I mean,
What do you mean?
No.
Yeah.
But yes,
No,
that
'cause-
bass line is
No, because this is it's a whole culture. Like the Glenn Miller thing is like weekend bandstand dance
Sure.
night.
I know what you're talking about, and
it just doesn't
and
change.
seven-
Like, people don't change that
Yes,
fast.
and 7/10 of our audience won't even know who Glenn Miller is, and
That
that's totally fine.
oh yeah.
Sorry, I guess what I was trying to get to the point where you have these parameters. We've talked about this a lot with the difference between design and art and the ways they work together in the process at hand. And it's within these parameters that you can create the familiarity and the artistic step aside that makes people want to chase that, right? So we can talk.
Can you just say that again? I just enjoyed hearing that. Say all of that again.
So
That was really good.
I don't know how to say that again.
Okay.
I already said it. We can rewind.
No. Sorry, I thought you knew. Sorry.
Well, there's the difference between design and art, right?
Yes.
And how you can use design to inform the art.
You said create a step aside.
Yeah,
I don't know what that...
yeah. Sorry, what
that
I was saying
new
was
to me. That's why
within those design parameters, you're using that space to artistically step aside. So you're stepping just outside with the familiarity being there, so you can maintain monetary incentive from the label, the A&R that continues to hire you for a certain thing, but you're constantly putting something just right or left of center. So you step aside, and that's how I view like OG and Volta, right? They're just familiar enough sounding, but their swing is always different. Every record is just subtly different, where it's a little they're using a sound that's synthetic but organic, and it reminds you of this, but it's that. And like there's always, that's the art, right? That's the art in pop music. It's not completely parametered, but there is a parameter. You have to work in 4 8-bar, 16-bar phrases, so the rapper knows when his cadence or her cadence comes in, right? There are these parameters that we know are efficient and work at getting the job done. What we're saying about mixing and mastering the same song over and over again, it literally sounds the same, right? It's the same key. It's like I've done this before. I've been in the writing room, and I've done it, or my co-producer that I either know or didn't know, however that circumstance shakes out, has done this. We're like, let's take a Mariah Carey record and let's take that chord progression and let's do it, because that was 10 years ago, so we're going to do that now, right? This is going to be fresh, because we're going to take those chords and we're going to put trap drums on it.
A hybrid. Make a hybrid.
And make it hybrid, so it's familiar,
Chimera.
but it's different. I mean, I've done this with Cyndi Lauper records, and like I think it's shaked out to work really well, and it's become interesting, and it's a new sound. It's not a new sound; it's a hybrid sound of many sounds, and then it would get reaction to be like a little bit left of center, but it can work. So I understand the incentive, but I don't really know where this discussion goes, because we've been talking about it for a bit, but it's a little bit soul sucking.
Well, let me make a pitch. I think Michael's notebook is like a volcano
it.
Oh my God,
ready
so-
to fucking pop.
Yeah.
So I want to pivot to that
Yes.
in a second. I've seen it, like the magma is just is boiling, right? But let me make
lava floor.
Some might say that's because I'm a fire sign. Others might say that's bullshit.
I would
No comment.
Bullshit.
I would never date those women. I would run from that. I would run from that situation.
I don't know what a fire sign is.
Yeah, just
Yeah, you
exactly.
do.
Just keep
Is
running.
that zodiacal
Just
or is
run.
that
It's
Chinese?
zodiacal.
This is zodiacal.
So let me make a pitch that when I think about there's this really interesting thing that happened when we sort of coalesced, right? And Spider and my conversation, and your and Spider, and you and Michael, and lately me and Michael, our conversation sort of coalesced into this thing that is the podcast, right? And I think that one of the core values that we're trying to agitate for is to raise up any form of that weird kid. Any form of that boy or girl, man or woman, who is looking to explore the edge of what's possible or what's possible for them, and make songs or records or sounds or grooves or masters or mixes or orchestral recordings that are exciting and a little dangerous and a little different. And I think that one of the core things that we're about is raising up those voices. We're going to find those voices, interview them, and we're going to support those people. And we have done. We've been lucky enough through our acoustics work, our PMC work, our mastering work, our mixing work. There are certain people that I'll just be like, I've had the email where it's like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm writing songs, but I can't afford to put out a record. I can't afford to mix and master. It's like, just done.
Yeah.
Send it to me.
Yeah.
Like you need,
I'm doing that right now.
yeah.
No, you have
need,
to find people to invest in.
yeah, yeah. And they're just, I mean, they're young versions of us, right? But they're also the next generation that will inspire. They're the people who will make the records that my kids will listen to, that will give my kids that sense of possibility,
Imagination,
whatever I can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are now just, older kid is 8 and younger kid is 6, and they're just at that phase where like music is becoming everything.
Yeah. Think about it a decade from now, what they're going to be listening to when she turns 18.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I don't.
And how good the AirPods are going to be.
I have no worries about what they listen to, but I love that there's a connection to something.
It's really nice.
And my daughter at 8 is sitting in a darkened room listening to music with a flashlight, sketching on a notepad. And I'm like, you really should open the curtains. She's like, no, Dad, no, this is it. Like, I need the flashlight. I need to be working in the dark. Yeah. And it's just like, all right, peace out.
Creative parameters.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Before we pivot to Michael's notebook, which I...
Do we have enough hard drive space for Michael's notebook? I mean, what I'm seeing right
Only
now...
one page right now.
Yeah.
These SD chips are pretty big.
when I sit down at the computer between the speakers and I hear a song that I feel like I've heard before, like we're talking about, I want to disrupt the negative feeling that we've been discussing for a minute.
We're confused, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My first thought, and it combines with the two things that we were just discussing, is how can this be heard a decade from now and still feel good, right? I feel like a lot of music that's being made now is made for now, and it might not even come out for 4 months. We don't even know what's going to happen in 4 months.
Yes.
Oh my God, what happened in the last 4 months, right? Since we've recorded this. So we don't even know if it's going to work. And thinking about putting out like a summer sounding record now, you would never do that. You're saving that for 2021. If you wrote it, it's still going to be relevant in 2021 if you wrote a timeless summer jam for the car, like for the cruise to the beach. I mean, it's going to still work in a year from now. So be patient. But when I sit down and I make a change, either sonically or emotionally, when I'm manipulating time and dynamics, it's because I want that song to have a life of its own. I want that song that I think I've already heard, or not even I know I heard it. I mean, I mixed 6 songs in the past 2 days, and I think one of them was different than the other 5 on a fundamental, elemental level, right?
It's probably objectively true.
Yeah. I think it is. I mean, I don't think I'd say it, right? I think it is.
Yeah.
And I want to create differentiators, and that can go stronger and further in saying that anybody that I mentor or we can touch on this podcast, like the goal should be to create differentiators. And that's people that create things that sit outside of the norm. And also, if it's going to fall in that norm and it's going to be in that popular music context, it should have just enough edge and nuance and difference to stand out so someone hears it and says, I want that.
Yeah.
And then instead of recreating that, you do you, and you put just enough of that into the thing, and then you keep pushing, and it gets wider and wider, and then that's when the charts change. That's when you develop real fans that'll come actually see you at a concert hall and spend money on your tickets. And I just wanted to double down on differentiator, and I think that that's an important thing.
It's really good.
Because there's going to be familiarity, and I don't want to deter people from thinking that they shouldn't be copying their idols for a minute until they kind of find their own thing. That's how everyone gets great.
Hooks are great.
Yeah.
I had an image.
Love
sorry.
hooks.
I had an image when you said that of these songs having individual lives, and the idea that if we can make enough different songs, we can harness the potential of more different kids.
Yes.
Sure.
Like that they will go out in the world, and that suddenly this kid who would have been lost in Arkansas or Ohio or Akron or whatever, that this one weird song that we made or you produced or whatever, that it can find their way to them and resonate and make them feel like they can. And that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That kind of gets me fired up again.
Same.
I actually think that this idea of aiming at dead center is totally the wrong thing to do. You want to aim toward the center and land somewhere just next to it.
Yeah, this is an archery.
Those are the things that win.
Are we talking about me in sports again?
Well,
are we back to teenage me?
We can.
That was me with a ball.
So maybe you were good at it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, we can tie it back, but I think it's you want to aim at the familiar, right? You want to aim at the center, but you want to just turn slightly left. It's like you need that differentiator that is just enough change, just enough innovation. I worked with a drummer called Kevin March once. He was in Guided by Voices and Shudder to Think, and he was playing in my band for a minute. And he told me, he's like, we want to take them, like meaning like bring them into my world, like the song, but we need to take them subtly and little by little. And I thought that was like a really important lesson for the 21-year-old version of me.
Let's leave room
Because I was a radical,
let's
in
leave
my
room for
thinking about it.
the My Bloody Valentines who just fucking take the table and the building that it was in and the neighborhood and burn it down and just fucking do something completely different. There are true sort of game changers sonically and musically that come along, and I'm sure you could make an argument.
Yeah,
against.
they are game changers, but it's not that far out. Like My Bloody Valentine is still 4/4. It's still it's not foreign.
I mean, that's a trap record
You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean
with a
it's
squirrely bass line.
Yeah. It's you can recognize sort of the.
I have to acknowledge how much fun I'm having watching you two fucking do that. That's awesome.
nice.
That's just fucking awesome. Like, yes, it's a trap record, exactly. And I'm seeing
I'm hearing.
I mean, I hear it.
Yeah.
I can. I just mixed this dude. He featured on a song. His name's Trevor Daniel. He's on Interscope, and I hear his voice over what you. I was hearing the same rap feature on your humming. Like it's anyway.
If I wasn't,
it works. And
if I wasn't on the second glass of Chablis, I'd have some super sort of My Bloody Valentine pun with a trap artist name.
I think it's coming later.
Tonight at 4 a.m. I know. I'll text you guys. Michael,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, what do you got in that?
I'm currently writing My Bloody Valentine pun. To be honest,
My Punny Valentine.
Actually,
there you go.
it looks like you're writing War and Peace. If we're honest, that's. I wish
finished
people
that
could see this
on the last page. Yeah, I'm gonna. I'll share these to the stories.
Let's go. I want to hear
That
it.
is some condensed cursive, bro.
Yeah,
and it's purple for everyone
It's
that
also
can't see this.
it's the left-handed
Let
guy in me. I'm trying to
let
I
the
don't know.
record show that Spider and John have no notebook. I brought one, but it's blank.
It's big though.
And it's large. Legal pad.
It's what I had.
It's a legal
Twice
pad.
as big as mine.
I couldn't
but-
find my gift shop notepad.
I'll give you another one.
which I
got
use for-
plenty of them because our events got canceled.
Ooh,
Yeah.
too soon.
Too soon.
Okay, differentiators. When I really dove into branding and thinking about brands, that word came up a lot. And I was like, okay, the system thinker in me is like, what is the equation for differentiation? And I'm like, I know that can't be possible because that's the opposite. Like, there is no equation and you just have to be different. But really, the more I dove into it, the more I saw that trends were the thing that guided differentiation in the weirdest way. And that was not what I would have guessed. But it aligns directly with Spider's point with the My Bloody Valentine reference, is that they weren't doing something like they weren't living in outer space and came here with music. They were part of the culture. They were hearing sounds, AKA, I'll say trends for this example, right? They were leveraging different emerging trends or previous trends that had existed. And I don't like trends is a dirty word. And I actually took a long time to even use that word in my own vocabulary because I thought it was a horrible thing. I started seeing it more like waves of energy.
It's a statistical reality.
Yeah, exactly.
These are waves. This is areas of culture that have energy is how I define a trend.
I like
and
that,
so
yeah.
they were looking at these areas and then saying, and maybe not consciously, but they were absorbing that energy and saying, all right, well, we dig this kind of music, and we dig that, and we dig these kind of films, and we dig this kind of clothing and hairstyle, and let's just mash that up and put it together. And again, they didn't maybe say that in a room together, but they ultimately
in their
did.
case, it was actually about a specific Fender Jaguar guitar
Yeah.
that
Right.
the dude picked up in a guitar store, and it made him play that way.
Yeah.
And they recorded that day, apparently.
Right.
It's sort of like the physical joy produced in relationship with the music.
I mean, I've
sort of
witnessed
the
that
source.
on a smaller scale too.
Yeah.
I mean, my whole
amazing.
musical experience as a child was that.
Yeah.
But
So exploratory.
Yeah.
but it was what informed that was this person's history of taking in all of these
His
influences.
taste.
And I
Yeah.
think, a lot
so
of that is
Echo and the Bunnymen or whoever, you know,
Right.
the bands he was listening to.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
so differentiation. I'm going to cover a few things, but the first thing I want to talk about is differentiation. I think like that comes from, or is the result of absorbing the energy of culture, and that can be the culture in America, or that can be the culture worldwide, or a culture of a specific
From the 70s.
from different eras. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where differentiation comes from. It's why it's different is that you're not on the energy of the current culture. You're pulling energies and you're hybridizing them to bring them into the current culture that actually, for some reason, people are like, this seems familiar. Whether it's on like a very like primal level, it feels familiar, or it feels familiar because you're referencing something from a generation before, like the 90s, which is what's happening all over the place. So that, to me, when I think about branding and differentiation, I'm looking at, well, what energy are you pulling from? Are you just pulling from what's happening now and you're competing with everyone to the side of you? Or are you competing with your elders? You're competing with past businesses and past cultural movements. And are you leveraging them and the energy that they brought into this world? So
Nothing's from outer space is what you're saying.
right.
But
Right.
also, that's a really interesting. I've actually never really thought about this. How far back can you go where it's still different?
I mean, ultimately, to get
No, I'm
ultimately
serious.
everything's kind of the same, and it's sort of a big circle. But
No, but there's symbolic points
yeah.
of view from
Yeah.
from a decade, whether it's fashion, design, music,
yeah,
anything. There's decadal symbols.
Yes,
right.
for sure.
We've discussed that.
Centuries. I mean,
And centuries, but I'm thinking modern era.
pop culture.
And thinking like, oh, we're going back. We were talking about
Yeah.
Danny Klein discussing like, I want 70s drums, I want 80s synths, and I want 90s claps, and then I
Right.
want a
Right.
modern vocal. Okay, well, what makes it modern? Is the modern vocal a 60s vocal performance?
Right.
What makes it different enough where there's a differentiator in there, but it's familiar enough? Like, how far back do you have to go where it becomes different again?
It's interesting.
yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. There's no right equation. I think the taste that you apply on top of all of this, you have all of these influences, and you could either choose to be full 70s, and it's like, oh, they sound like a band in the 70s, but they're recorded on modern gear.
Yeah,
or
that's a good one.
or maybe 60% of your music sounds like that, and then the rest is modern hip hop. Like there is a balance of all of these elements. And I think, to me, what makes the great artist is that energy is your palette, and then what you're painting with that palette is the differentiator, or is what is differentiating you from everyone else around you. And so, yeah.
Well, would you say, I know this one will hit home with you. Would you say that emo trap music is different than the emo we listened to in the early 2000s?
Yes and no.
Yes and no, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's different because the drums are different. The bass lines are actually the bass lines are the same with a different sound. You're not
Right.
using a live bass, you're using an 808, but the melodies are, I mean, you could probably put Conor Oberst melodies over these and it would be the same melody.
Is it serving the same audience?
But it's
the
not.
same archetype?
Serving the same purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
Same social utility.
Emotional purpose. Yeah. Social utility for sure.
Like, you could look at Marilyn Manson, and you could look at, I don't know, Noisia or something.
Yep.
You can look at like different ways that these aspects of human existence are expressed and related to.
Do you think that we're supposed to, or music makers are supposed to go into the room with the intention of making, of hitting a certain audience? Like with that?
I mean, it could be a useful guideline.
Yeah.
You could.
Could be.
I haven't seen it work personally, but like I haven't been in enough rooms.
I mean,
in that
every
way.
pop songwriter's doing it.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
they are. They are. That's what I'm thinking from Michael's perspective and the branding side when you're in these meetings with these artists and these creators. Do they think that they need to do that? And is that the intention? Is like, oh, I make this music and this is my audience.
I think to me, so I define design as the rendering of intent. I think that intention is a fundamental aspect of producing great design work. I think if you have a huge team or even a team of 5, let's say, aligning them on outcomes around specific intent is super helpful for getting the energy of the business to move forward. I think if your management team and your A&R and your label other peeps and
marketing department.
all have
everyone-
a different version of your audience.
if you were
That's a
aligned,
problem.
if you were all aligned, that would only help in so many ways. When the social media post they create has the same emotional qualities as the music you're putting out. Ideally, that's how it would
or
work.
reaches the same audience.
I'm struck by just within our conversations about this podcast and what it could be, just the sort of interesting tension between your sort of intuition to meet you as Michael, your intuition to meet a sort of an archetype, a target customer, and my intuition to say fuck them, and we're going to do what we do and play, and whoever likes it likes it.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that
actually 2 ways of saying the same thing. Could be.
You're addressing a target customer,
yeah,
except it looks more like you than
It's a different way of
a new
describing the same thing, because the people who dig you are the people who share your taste. And if you're making a product, you're going to try to harness what's natural and authentic and make it available so people who share your taste can join you. There isn't like a layer of trickery in
can't
between.
drop this to me, like drop this on air and just surprise me with some new insight.
I mean,
no, that's the insight.
I've
now
spent
That was
I'm
a conver-
now I
yeah.
feel dumb.
32 hours into my official PMC relationship with Michael, and we're doing this work.
Yeah,
so
you're
Yeah.
officially crushing it.
We
That is
had
a
that
really
conversation the other night, actually.
good point, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I've never thought
If
of it
you're
that
not
way.
designing for someone, you're designing for yourself, and people like you.
People think marketing and design it's all about trickery, and it doesn't need to be.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Was yes, rendering of intent. I think that's fantastic.
That's fantastic.
But is the Chablis?
yes,
Yes.
we
Dennis Race, Maltmains, 2017. It's fantastic.
Shout out
Sublime,
to
Cheap
Dennis.
as fuck too. It's like $24. It's fantastic. So the rendering of intent, I love that. But the intent can be your own sonic intention, right? So I want to be known for this, or I want to make a certain record style that appeals to this audience. Those are two very different versions of intent that can all happen under the same roof.
Yeah.
In a company or in a personal sole proprietorship. Which one has stronger odds in their favor of success in your experience?
I think an intent that
Short term or long term? That's
True.
probably important.
very
Good
true.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, the one-hit wonder or the
right.
artist.
Well, there's
that
no
lasts.
question that if you craft a resonant kind of track of the moment, the chances of it hitting are high. You know, if you tune into the zeitgeist, you know, whatever that is right now, it's interesting how shit music is at this minute when we need music so badly. I think, just as a side, in our conversation at home, we did when we had 20 people, and I made a bold pitch that I thought that this moment would unleash creativity. It hasn't.
No.
It's been really dismal. The art's response to this moment.
I was on the phone with Ryan Lewis today, kind of discussing this because he has just decided to not just decided earlier this year, got a record deal as a solo artist and trying to put out records. And his conversations with his labels led him to think, why am I putting records out this year? Right. So and his thought was that most people are feeling that way too.
Sit this one out.
Let's sit this one out. How do you compete with the movements that are happening now and the conversations politically that are happening now with your music?
Right.
So I don't know if creativity is being stifled. I don't think we're seeing the fruits of the labor.
So
relevance has changed.
That ties into the point that I diverted from, which is these artists, the truly great artists that I've been in the room with. There's no turning it off. They are dysfunctionally on fire, overflowing.
Yeah.
It is usually problematic. How like them they are, and how unbelievably difficult they are to wrangle.
I feel that way every day.
But it's so potent that it infects the world. Maybe sometimes for a minute, sometimes for a career. But the when I'm thinking of people like Trent Reznor, and people like that who have this just it's just intrinsic, this characteristic.
Imogen Heap gives me that feeling. It's just pouring. It's like light shooting out of her fingers.
Yeah.
Like it's just music.
Literally, she's controlling music with her fingers at this point.
And you look at someone like related to Trent, Bowie, who had this long commitment to himself and to his artistry, and then at various points the world sort of aligned with it, and like, oh, Bowie's cool, and then Bowie keeps being Bowie and keeps doing new Bowie, and then at different points we sort of tune back in, like his last record, for example, was suddenly this sort of moment where everyone's like, holy shit, Bowie's an artist, and it's like, always has been.
There was
never lost it.
There was another thing I wanted to add about branding. It's another element that I like to work on early on with clients, which is understanding their origin story. Because I think when you really get back to the early naive days and stories of, I prefer to work with businesses of 1 to like 3 because they're much more connected to the output. But when you get to those stories about their origin, you really see this energy and excitement. And to me, that's what I want to harness in any future endeavors, whether like it doesn't need to be the same thing that you're energetic or excited about, but taking that and bringing it forward is what I'm excited about, because that to me, I mean, for Bowie, right? He was excited about making music among other things, but I mean, really, I'm making art in his music. And that's what was propelling him his whole career. I don't know, and I can't speak for him, obviously, but I don't know if it was trying to get pop hits every time he put out a record, and I would probably assume that wasn't the intent. I think the intent was, and it happened. Yeah. Right?
I don't think it happened by accident entirely.
He's almost so, he's so unique that you can't even extrapolate like anything from him.
But he rode the trends and rode, rode the edge of popular culture. Because he was in the mid 60s when he started, right? Making records.
Yeah. Well,
it's.
My understanding of history, his history is kind of simplistic, but I think he was this crazy creative outlier who had one of these moments where Bowie lined up with the world. He rode that for a minute, got bitten by it, reacted to it, got lost for a minute. The world lined up with his new sort of voice again, and this happened more than once. He's uniquely sort of. He just had this sustained career, but mostly a sustained commitment to himself. I know from talking to Trent about him that this sort of this commitment to artistry, and I remember reading about Radiohead making, they had Creep, and Creep was this smash hit song that was really kind of cheesy, and they knew it was kind of cheesy. And they were moving so quickly, they were developing so quickly artistically. Like you look at the arc between that first record, Pablo Honey, and the Bends, and it's like, oh, it's pretty fucking profound, right? And they were embarrassed of Creep right when it was peaking, right? And they were, of course, make another Creep, do more Creep, you know? And at some point, Michael Stipe reached out to them and was like, you know, we've been through this. You guys need to, here's how you can think about it. Here's how you can approach it. And I've seen Tom York talk about this, sort of the importance of Michael Stipe in his journey of like owning his artistry, Bowie style, and just being like, you don't need to get sucked into this machine. You don't need to make another Creep. You can, and they went on to make OK Computer, and that was a smash. And then they just fucked that with Kid A, and you know.
But also thinking logistically, there's no way you can make another Creep.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
that's
it's just it's gimmick. I mean,
That's important to recognize, because once asked for another thing, it's on a more basic level. It's when someone says, "Hey, can you make this sound like this?" You're like, "Well, the source material is nothing like this. How am I going to remake Creep? I don't even have that guitar anymore."
Not a mix.
You know.
I love the way you pulled it back to like the mechanics of making records, because it's so true. If it's not there, they're not the same kids who wrote Creep, who felt Creep, who believed it. When,
Exactly.
you know, they're
And the world's heard it already now.
Yeah, and it doesn't need another one.
and the world is
You
different.
can play that again.
It's
What
it's too different to copy. It just immediately sounds derivative.
Yeah. But let's keep going on this differentiator thing, because what you're talking about, the names you're dropping at the moment are they're differentiators. They are so committed to artistry that they would never consider doing something they've already done, or something someone else has done in its entirety. So thinking, like I asked, how far back is different. Yeah, Bowie might have had an influence from the 40s. You know, there might be a horn line that was played. He's like, "That's sick. So let's base this horn line off of that." Like maybe there's a moment in the studio that he feels that way. I'm sure the greatest artists have referenced decades before and in their artistry. There's no reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering at this moment, I'm going to direct this specifically at Rory. I don't think what we refer to as the mixed down industrial complex allows us to have a unique identity to offer us the power to differentiate. I don't think we're even told it's okay. We're always told, Bowie used this, we need to have this. So-and-so used this, we need to have this. Versus so-and-so used, I always think of, and this is going to be controversial, I always think of someone hits me with, "Oh, Jason Joshua does that. Can we try it?" And I think if Jason Joshua does it, that's key for me not to do it, right?
Yes.
I very much believe that, and I have nothing against him as a mix engineer. I think he's fantastic. But why am I going to do what he does? I'm never going to do it as good as he does.
No one is out Jasoning Jason.
Yes.
I mean, he's owning that piece of ground.
Yes.
Whatever it is, like it or not, no one does it better than him.
Yes, and no one is going to do what I do better than I, and no one is going to do better that you do than you. And if that becomes the education here in our conversation of differentiation and doubling down on intent, and we need to discover that first, and where is the literature and the forums and sources for that information?
That's Michael. That's what Michael's talking about.
I know.
The best differentiator are true facts about your origin story.
Yeah.
It's who you are.
Right. So how do we embolden that and bring that to life?
So here's a take that I threw out one
Here's
night.
a workshop you can take.
Well, no,
Call now.
With Michael Morgan.
here's something that I threw out one night here early in the conversations, which is, you know, if you had a statistician or someone look at the odds of success in music, they're so fucking low.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're horrifically low, right? It's an incredibly challenging business. And there's a case to be made that, look, if you mimic and if you copy, your chances of success are very slight. You may as well, go all in and bet on yourself and try your unique thing and see what happens, because it's likely that you're going to, either way, that you're going to end up working at your dad's, leather fucking shop or whatever. Your mom's.
Wow, you could have went way worse with that.
No,
It's
No,
not
I
that
know.
bad.
This isn't Ireland.
Duck-
like,
duck
in
farm.
the-
I
That's
don't know.
great.
How
I
many
don't
leather
know.
shops
Yeah,
there
what kind of
are
leather
around?
shop?
They're everywhere.
I want to
know.
go there.
Are they making wallets?
Hold
or
on,
shit?
keep
Said
going.
Jocko's
Wait, keep going.
What are we?
S&M gear.
Wait, keep going. Keep going.
But,
Keep going. Keep going.
That's what I was saying.
if we were to take a cold sort of view of this, the chances of you winning are low. So raise your chances by trying something different. Try an alternative strategy, because if you don't, what I often say to young bands is, look, if you're trying to copy Serban, or you're trying to copy Rich Costi, or you're trying to copy any band, the Killers, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. There are people who can copy better than you. They're better at it. They have better tools. They have better producers. They have better gear. They're better at hearing it and mimicking it. So just stop. Just do the. Oftentimes I have people who will send me a record and they'll apologize in the email and they'll say track 7 is weird. We know it's weird, and I'll make a point. I listen down, and assuming track 7
It's your favorite track.
Yeah, but I'll make a point of saying, I love what you guys did on track 7.
Yeah.
Because it sounds the most like you of everything on this record, And I think, as
It's not. They're not actually saying it's weird. They're saying they're insecure. About
they're
it.
saying they're
Exactly.
scared. They're
Yeah.
saying they
Yeah.
know that I work on normal sounding records, in air quotes, and this is not normal, and they're worried that it doesn't sound legit. And yeah, they're looking for a fucking hug.
Well, on an even more micro example, this happens pretty often, which is you can do this better. I know you can do this better, and then I say, "Oh, let me have what you did." I'm like, "Oh, I would have never done that." So who says I'm going to do it better? What does that even mean? I want you. I want what you did,
Yes.
and that's not even a whole track. That could be a specific sound effect that you didn't give me, you didn't print because you think I know better because I'm the professional.
Let's explore quickly. I was talking to a friend in Ireland yesterday about this, about a particular individual who disseminates horrible fucking advice for 20 years now. He's been doing it about mastering, and one of his core principles is the idea that you shouldn't be compressing your own 2-bus, and you shouldn't be limiting because I've got better tools than you. I've got the fancy compressor or whatever. You're just a kid in a basement. I'll do this because I've got the expensive opto fucking tube compressor, whatever.
Yeah.
It's dog shit. I mean, it's complete rubbish. We know it, and we know why, because of course all of the decisions you make are made through that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I get that from people who have bought into that thing of like, okay, so I took off all the stuff off the bus because you're going to do that with your expensive stuff, right? And it's like, no. I want to hear what you guys made.
Let's take it a step further. No, because I can't.
Well, yeah.
Because
it's
you did
impossible.
that, and it's impossible to know every 0.1 differentiator you have on your mix bus. There's no way it's impossible to do.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Now, it doesn't mean that you couldn't or I couldn't improve it, but you should have that vibe to emulate, to hear, to reference, to let influence your decision making. That's really important.
Yeah, it's super important, and that's a go ahead.
I mean, to this mastering engineer who is using his gear as a differentiator, right? I have this Daniel Schmachtenberger quote here. I don't know if
Dude's wild.
many people know who Daniel
Strap in, folks.
Schmachtenberger is. but
Shit's
he's-
getting real.
Brace
what
yourself.
did Eric Weinstein describe him as? He's part of this sort of California rationalist sort of community, right? Anyway, smart guy, sense maker.
Wicked.
And he says, you don't differentiate yourself by buying stuff. You differentiate yourself by what you offer. And to me, I wrote that down because the mixed down industrial complex is continually drumming into everyone's heads that the buying of things is the solution to problems.
Yes.
And obviously we know that's not true.
Yep. I have a really hard time with that.
That's tight.
I have a hard time being asked what I use on things. And my response is never the answer that people want to hear
Yeah.
because it's irrelevant. I can discuss the tool or the version of the tool that could be used to get a desired result, but there's so many versions of the tool that can get that desired result.
I mean, think about like,
But it's a desired result that is important. What are you trying to get? What is your intention? What are you trying to succeed with? And
in terms of a differentiator, gear can be a differentiator, right? I mean, your choices, you can have a collection of gear that tells a story about you, right? But it's the story that's the differentiator. It's not the gear. Anyone can buy the gear unless it's one of a kind, custom made, but let's put that to one side.
Sure.
It's the true facts about your origin story that are the differentiators that you can effortlessly maintain throughout time. And that's why I sort of bring up like the short-term goals versus the long-term goals, in terms of brand or sales or income, whatever the business is doing. It's if you want to form a unique relationship with anyone, you need to be recognizable, and you're recognizable through the things you present. And if you present fake things, you have a huge tax on you for maintaining that lie, right? And so you want to tap in to the natural resource of your different, like what makes you different, like the things that are weird about you, and own them. And nobody can compete with that. Now you're creating an industry of one.
so much easier to replicate. Yeah.
I mean, you do it in your sleep. You do it with a headache. You do it, nobody can compete with you at that level because it's just natural. You're tapping into the natural resource of your own differences.
I love that. And it reminds me of a quote that someone told me actually, which is, I was speaking to them about differentiation and they're like, everything you do is different. And I was like, fuck. I guess you're right. Like, even if you're copying someone, you're even copying them different. But it's like, try not to copy too much. But that said, like every step
Depends on
you
the
make,
it depends on the phase in your career you are.
Right,
I
true.
would tell a
Yeah.
15-year-old who's sort of dabbling, copy all this shit.
right, absorb.
Copy it. Try to copy
Yeah,
it.
trace
See
the
what
lines
you discover.
and then take
Right.
the underpaper away.
Yeah.
And
Copy,
'Cause at that
copy
point,
until you find your
It's
voice.
Copying is a means of absorbing, whereas there's copying as a means of thinking it will make you successful, which happens later in life.
Yeah.
So I think, but yeah, I totally agree. Like copy early on. There's an Ira Glass quote about taste and how early on, I was just looking it up and it's really long, so I'm not going to read it. But early on, yeah, absorb as much as you can, build your taste up. But don't think that copying, you replicate a Picasso and now you're a famous Picasso. That's just not how it works. But
Right.
this idea that everything you do is different, it kind of takes a lot of weight off of trying to be different and trying to seek the answer or the right answers or the right gear. Your approach is different based on everything you've heard. And there are some fundamental things you need to get right.
But do you find a tension? So one of the things that we love about Michael in this conversation is that his mind, he's a productizer. So he can see us talking and he can see it as a product from the listener's point of view, the subscriber's point of view, the customer's point of view. And so with that instinct to productize, do you find a tension between this sort of effortless differentiation that we're all sort of doing all the time, and the impulse to sort of perfect it and make it less different to be accepted, like the desire to be accepted, and the tension between that and the sort of natural differentiation.
Right. Yeah, I think it depends on how broadly you want to appeal. I think like if you're looking to appeal to the entire world, there's going to be a lot more filtering that will need to happen to be more universal. And we've been talking a lot recently about universal symbols, right? Whereas if you're like, I'm totally cool, selling out 1,000 cap venues and in like 4 states,
But it could be your only way to make the smallest possible audience. It could be the only way you make an impact.
Yeah,
If
right.
you have viable audience.
Yeah. And to that point, I'd say, do that. Be really good at selling out 4 states at 1,000 cap venues. Like,
What's your ticket price?
right. Yeah, that too. And
yeah.
even, or
You know?
where do you live? Do you have this cheap cabin that you live in that you're happy
Yeah.
with? Then great.
Did we
Then,
surpass
yeah.
our Seth Godin quota just then?
It's not possible.
I don't think it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
we don't have
he's-
a cap on
No.
Seth Godin
No,
references.
we might have to pay him.
Guys,
a
I'll be right
royalty.
back.
Yes.
So,
Should we pause? No.
yeah, why not?
I gotta pee.
Yeah, I gotta
Let's
pee.
let's pause. Yeah, let's do it. No, take your time. What are you doing?
I like the idea of.
I think speaking of differentiators, this is the people who've had weed and the people who haven't.
I was going to ask
We
for
just
some,
mean the
but I
spider.
kind of feel I feel good right now.
It's plugged in. The battery
Yeah.
died.
His
Yeah.
weed's
I
charging
was
right
not.
now.
My weed is charging. I wasn't vigilant.
Did we finish all the wine?
Yeah,
I think we did.
unfortunately so. That was
Good thing I have 2 wine fridges in my house.
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
are
say, do you have any
filled.
more? Run
No,
out.
it was
no, I think my head's in a good place. We should keep going.
yeah, it's really good.
Good with wine.
So I wrote this note down today.
Maybe tomorrow.
Might be an interesting jumping off point. I don't quite know what I meant by this when I was thinking of it, but I remember being on a long walk this afternoon while Josh was getting some work done, and I wrote this down.
Okay.
The focusing of sound and the focusing of ideas, an engineer-focused lifestyle. And what I'm trying to get across with that is that we're so focused on getting the right sound, we don't seem as focused at getting our life in order. We're always doing stuff for other people. We're not prioritizing ourselves. And I'm wondering how we can get focused on the engineer's life. And what it means to live a good life as an engineer. And we always talk about it, and I don't think we've kind of yet stumbled on it. Any thoughts there?
I feel like the first most obvious thing, and I was going to say this earlier, is having people around that you admire, respect, and can make sure or just help
Guide.
assure that you're taking care of yourself and they're taking care of themselves, and it's a mutual looking out for each other. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the inward accountability is essential, but also having and seeing and being around people that are accountable to themselves is super important.
Well, it's built externally originally. You know, you emulate, you model. The ability to do that comes from other people.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, while you were in the bathroom, Rory and I were kind of riffing on, discussing my origin story and Michael's bit of an origin story, and how we've never really heard anything like that versus I was in the studio and there was this tough guy and he hit me in the face and made me take out the trash and blah, 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 blah. And that story we're always looking up to, or subconsciously, is that's all we know about what the studio life is. An engineer, you pay your dues. And
Yes.
and
Take shit.
yeah. And I don't necessarily think that there's no dues to be paid. And that's not, I guess, what I would.
Abuse is not paying dues.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah. And when I think about how nuanced and focused our moves are on the rig and the computer, on the console, anywhere we're working, engineers are so fine-tuned sonically. It seems like we lack focus in so many other points of view in life.
I think it's partly because it's hard to do this career. It's a career that's hard to do. When you start, you're broke mostly. People are mostly broke when they start, right? They're young. They don't have significant savings. And they're thinking, well, let me put it this way. I know a lot of people that came to LA with not a whole lot. you know, to try to do this, and it's not easy. It's hard to do, and people are, like Rory was saying, it's highly competitive, so people feel like they're competing with other people. And part of the way that young people seem to be competing with their contemporaries is to outwork them.
Right.
You know, and one of the things that we've been talking about is this sort of self-sacrificial, I actually don't want to call it blue collar. It's not really that. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a fair characterization.
I think you're right.
I think we've sort of shorthanded this sort of blue collar aesthetic. It's not right.
It's a fetishization of
self-sacrifice.
Working. Yes. Yeah. There's a
it's heroics.
I'm just going to say it. There's an engineer who I really like. I've never met him, Mike Bosey at Grumman, and he will post about working on Sundays. There's always a video post, and it's him driving in the lot, demonstrating with some song about work the weekends or whatever, you know.
I see this all the time.
Yeah, and it's a kind of it's to demonstrate that he's paid his dues and that he's still paying his dues and that he's not, you know, there's a kind of a humility to it or a you know, a groundedness or whatever you want to do. And I don't think it's necessary. His work at the highest level speaks for itself. If he wants to take the weekend off, I still respect the Kendrick records he's mastered. You know, and maybe they might even be better if he took weekends off.
Yeah,
I don't know because of who I don't.
Yeah, but it's up to every individual to balance that.
Yeah, you shouldn't not work or create when inspiration strikes in any form of work. But the minute you feel like, maybe I shouldn't be working today, I think that's okay, right? Where you're not.
Of course, it's okay.
Well, we're not told that.
We're not.
So of course,
and that's part of the thing about this instance that Rory's talking about is what is this message? Who's receiving it? How is it influencing them? Are we conscious of the things we're putting out there? Like you're talking about a pattern of posts on a single Instagram page by a single individual, but we're not just talking about that. This isn't personal. We're talking about an attitude that is passed down from generation to generation. And it's not just audio engineering. It's sort of this idea that your value in life comes from these kinds of heroics and self-sacrifice. And it's I don't know how else to say other than self-sacrifice. You're risking your health and your well-being for some goal. And while that's good in a single episode or some moment of intensity, on a chronic level, like on an ongoing level, that's just chronic stress.
Yeah.
So when I hear the word self-sacrifice, that sounds like something I would say to my kids as a positive. Like sometimes, girls, self-sacrifice is important and you know, but actually, you know, when we speak about self-sacrifice, we mean that I suffer or I lose or I work hard.
You are diminished.
I'm diminished to raise you up,
right?
Or to raise someone up, someone who needs it, right?
In the attempt to raise up.
But what if I self-sacrifice and work 24/7 to make shitty records that go nowhere in bad studios with bad artists and bad producers? What if it means nothing? That's not a win.
No.
Right? Yeah. So when I hear the words, I think, that kind of feels good and important and right and
altruistic.
Righteous. Altruistic. Yeah. And it's not often. You know, it doesn't serve anyone. It's just wasted potential. And I think we're looping back to sort of, again, another reason why we're here at the table and why we feel that we have something to say, which is this idea of unlocking potential. We had an amazing Google Hangout with a client the other day for an acoustics project, and it was so uplifting to see this guy's energy and potential, and to be in a position, he trusted us, and to be in a position to help him unlock that and talk about a 5-year plan, talk about where he was headed, and really know that it will happen. You know, I would bet money on this kid getting where he wants to be, because
Rory went into proud dad mode when we were talking to this young dude. It was really, I love seeing Rory.
well, he would just
shift
say
into-
stuff,
yeah.
and it was just like, oh my
no,
God.
I know.
It was just like, how do you know that? You're 20 whatever,
Yeah.
and you know that, and it's just like it's like if we were to track all of the people who did important work and looked at markers, like this kid was hitting
them,
you
yeah.
know, and it was like, you know, I can't guarantee anything, but the chances, you know, are high that you're going to, even if you don't make hit records, you're going to realize your potential, because you're, you know, he was like, I've bought all the gear, I've tried it, everything that they said I was supposed to do, you know, the mixed down industrial complex like we talked about, and it's not worked. I've been burned, I've been disappointed, I can hear the difference. You know, I'm obviously using shorthand, but ultimately he was like, you know, I heard you guys speak, I get it, let's do it. Let's commit to what matters.
Yeah.
Hearing properly, you know, working, you know, whatever. And it was really exciting and so when I think about what we're here for, that's definitely one of the things, is this idea of unlocking potential in all those weird kids. And weird young adults and weird middle-aged adults like me.
yeah.
I mean, I want us to challenge people to think differently about all things, but one in particular, like we're discussing now, is the 7-day work week. Do you really think you're great on day 7? Or do you think it'll be better on day 8 if you take day 5 off? When you're making a record that requires 2 weeks of straight work due to deadline, do you actually think you'll be great on 8 consecutive days versus taking 2 of them off and then doing more on day 8? I know there are statistics on this in corporate world where a 4-day work week is actually more efficient than a 5, but just fundamentally and structurally, the 5 is still implemented. But there's enough data that shows that people are more inspired to come back on day 1 after having 3 days separation from what they do, right?
And again, we're back to this, I'm going to stumble again on the word, fetishization.
Nice. You almost did it that time.
It's the Chablis and my accent and my speech impediment, but all of these things combined. We're back to this idea, these stories of records you love or producers you love or engineers you love. And it's like, well, one time we worked 28 days without sleep to make that record you love. And the line that Spider and I always come back to is, you know, did they make that record because of that or despite that?
Yeah.
Because of those speakers or despite that? You know, so like I know this band made a great record on a Soundcraft Ghost. It's like, okay, whatever, you know, fine little console.
But what you're talking about is the exceptions to the rule.
Yes.
Right? And that's really important to note. I'm sitting at this table bringing up this concept of taking time off. I've also worked 365 days straight, right?
Yes.
I've lived both sides, and I've seen that that's not the way forward to sustain relationships that are important to you outside of work, to sustain health, and to
All of which supports the quality of your work.
Exactly. So I'm raising this topic at this point because I'm in the midst of, I guess, positioning myself in this, and I'm getting very little validation from the community because of these Sunday posts. I'm getting...
And that mentality.
Yeah, and that mentality.
That's good in a way. It shows a need. You know, if you're not getting the feedback, the positive feedback, and you're doing something you know is right, it just shows a need. It shows a cultural gap.
Yep.
And, you know, I mean, people are afraid to signal that for whatever reason, obviously, because people don't.
So I'm having really good luck with communication and simply saying, "Hey, do you mind if I get that to you on Monday?" And
That sounds like, that's like saying I'm having really good luck with breathing. Like,
Boundaries, bro. I'm going to inhale next.
yeah, but okay, when was the last time you listened to a Pensado's Place or listened to a Mix with the Masters where that was...
It's the exact opposite. They say, whatever happens, come hell or high water. You know, my wife was giving birth to our first kid and I was in the studio finishing that Post Malone record. And you're like, that's not good. This is not...
Yeah.
You shouldn't be proud of that, and you definitely shouldn't be telling, you know, that was
how does your wife or girlfriend feel about what you just said?
How do you feel in tomorrow's session carrying that?
It's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. And
Michael and I were jamming the other day on PMC marketing, and I wrote this thing down. If you're working too much, you don't have time to be great, right? It takes more than work to achieve greatness. It takes community. And I thought that was really interesting. And it made me think of the time we spent in the building with Tony, those bunch of years.
5 years.
The crew, all mixing. And the learning, you would notice the learning was taking place at lunch and out on the stoop smoking a cigar and like watching Jon Stewart and making comments and eating tacos and stuff. Like that's where the perspective was exchanged. That's where, the findings were shared and where we talk things through. Like that's where the most of the learning was taking place. And if you're just grinding in front of the computer, that's not happening.
Man, I'm getting chills just thinking about that. I have no memory of sitting in front of the computer and a high output of knowledge and learning coming from it. It's all about those moments. Wow, that's kind of amazing that you just brought that up. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you work too much, you're choking off the source of greatness.
Yeah.
what about working too much in isolation?
Well, that's
I know a guy who did that.
Yeah.
working too much isolates you.
Yeah.
That's I think that's what the point is.
Yeah.
It can. Although, I mean, something that I've noticed with you and I working together, and when I started up my practice as an independent designer, I wanted to be around people as much as I could because growth absolutely comes from and through the collaboration with other people. I mean, having these perspectives, like, John saying, hey, I'm struggling with the fact that I'm not working Sundays and everyone's talking about it. And you saying, well, maybe that actually shows a need. And then him being like, oh, true. That loop happened in seconds. And that could be something that you're stewing over for a month, without the right.
The problem is the nature.
Yeah.
The problem is the nature of the work of a mix engineer.
Right.
It's not that collaborative.
Yeah.
And that's the point. It's like you go into the hole and you jack into the matrix and you fucking touch a mouse and you do that for 14 hours,
Right.
7 days a week. Like this is
So
not
we
how
have
you
these
grow.
workspaces that often are people alone with a computer or in groups of two or whatever.
Yeah.
Very aligned and,
Right.
and sharing very similar information streams. They're watching the same YouTube videos. They're listening to the same stuff, same podcasts, whatever.
Yeah.
Could I just say that I think the reason people are doing that is they believe that is the connection that they're making, but I think it's a false connection that they're making. And I think that's the dangerous part about social media is that people are like, oh, we're in this text thread or I comment on this thing or I read this thing. They're only getting like 1/100th of the actual richness of the information, and the connection's not really there. And so I just think anyone that's listening should be cautious of how much how much importance they're putting on social media and the connections they're making there, and how realistic it actually is, how beneficial it is.
Yeah.
But I'm curious though, and I'm sorry to take you off this thread.
Yeah.
I'm just curious though, like what can someone do who is plugging in even 5 days a week or 7 days a week? What can they do to not be in that mindset, and how can they find people to connect with?
So to me, two separate questions. One is the idea that, so it's interesting because we've sketched, these characters. There are people who are these artistic outliers. We talked about the Boys and the Trents and the whoever. These people who are so on fire with themselves that they can't not be that person. And there's lots of them. I mean, I've met some, and we've all met some in the room.
Yeah.
And they're going to be a dysfunctional 72-year-old creative nutcase, right? And those people are often held up as sort of idols or something we should model, and it's like they're wild anomalies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in terms of let's separate those people, because I don't think they make those kind of true artists. You know, was Picasso a nice guy? No, not at all. Was he a genius? No question. We don't want to model a work life on Picasso, right? Chewing up people and relationships and, you know, human capital. So let's get to people who actually make, you know, I mean, he was turning misery and people's lives into art.
He was also miserable as well.
Yeah, it was wildly dysfunctional, right? So we get to people who are making records as a job, or who are part of, they're producing, engineering, writing, or playing on records, our audience broadly, right? And you think about, the first thing is this idea that, is it guaranteed that if I work more than other people, that I will have more success? Is there a direct correlation? So let's look at that as a question. If I work 7 days a week and my competition works 6 days a week, am I more likely to win?
Well,
what do we think of that question?
The primary factor in the success of classical musicians is the number of hours, right? That's in one of the Gladwell books, I'm pretty sure. I don't think that's controversial.
No, but that's repetition, and that is getting the practice under your fingers. You know, that's
because most kids are doing other things,
right.
Yeah, that's more mastery than an indicator of success.
Yes,
mastery, and they are also, you know, classical musicians.
But it is a predictor of success. Like,
yes,
right.
In classical musicians, their careers, their success, their income, their position in orchestras, the prestige of those orchestras are all tied to the number of hours they've spent.
Yeah. And that kind of picks up the thread from last time, which is the preparedness part of luck, right?
Sure.
So,
but that doesn't mean they're overworking.
right, true.
But let's look at,
that is a piece of evidence.
Let's think of a young 25-year-old classical violinist, and she has played every day for, you know, X number of hours since she was 5 or 4. She is a reproduction machine for music that someone else has written. She's a vessel for someone else's art. And like glass that is clean, the better she is, the purer the original intent is transmitted to the listener.
Just like an audio engineer.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. But as opposed to a Picasso, you know, a crazy creative artist. So we've immediately you know, going back to our conversation last week about these extremes on, we've certainly marked 2 points on a continuum. Yeah. So a classical musician is different to a wild creative artist. So where does a modern mix engineer fall on that scale? So let's say artist just does what the fuck he does whenever he wants to do it because he's a crazy creative. It comes out of him when it comes out of him. The classical musician, we see a direct correlation between hours, reps, and success. So what about a mix engineer? Does that mean that if he or she mixes 7 days a week, they're more likely to have success than someone who mixes 5 days a week?
Well, my simple answer is you have to be prepared for when that crazy artist type calls you to do the thing, right? So that might be on a Sunday, but that might mean taking a Saturday off, right? That might mean taking a day of the week off to take care of yourself, whatever that day is, right? If you have a hard rule that says I don't work Sundays, and then your favorite artist calls you and you prioritize going out to dinner with your friend over your favorite artist,
it's not going to happen.
I could see you doing that.
Am
I wrong?
And that might be cool with it.
I kind of feel like going to APL right now.
It depends on the artist.
Yeah.
It depends on but that's why I'm saying that specifically. It depends. No, it doesn't depend on everything.
Well, the whole circumstance and how you feel.
Sure.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, if you hit day 7 and you need that night off because you're so overworked and you just feel it, you feel sick, your glands are swollen, and you're really doing it, and then that artist calls you and you fuck that up, you're not going to get hired again, right? So thinking about that spectrum, I don't think, yes, that spectrum is very relevant, but the mix engineer has to be accessible to crazy artist type And in order to be accessible at all times to crazy artist type, you have to take care of yourself, which means you have to give yourself time to rebuild, to regenerate, to rest, and to focus. That's impossible.
That's part of the job, right?
Exactly. That's part of the job.
Yeah.
That's part of the preparedness for that call. Then
That's maintaining your biological equipment.
And also, if you happen to feel great on day 7, take the gig.
Go in. But this is all about being in tune with understanding yourself and what you need. And that's kind of what this is. This is at least why I brought this up and why I want to discuss it, is because we should be discussing this with ourselves at all times. And then, like Spider said, it depends on everything. Then you assess, do I continue here or do I step aside and let someone else take it? I would like to exist in a community where if I felt that way and I said, I'm not going to give my best effort to this, I know enough people that will do the job that I will pass the job to. I don't think I would ever turn down that job without saying this person should do it.
Sure, yeah.
That's another whole conversation that we should get to about supporting the community. And what do you always say? The high tide raises all boats.
The tide that
Rising tide, yeah.
rising tide
Yeah.
raises all boats.
Yes.
Something like that.
And I think about that a fair amount. Is I don't want to simply turn something down if I can't handle it. And can't handle it doesn't mean you're weak. Can't handle it means I'm sick today.
Yeah, bad timing.
Bad timing, or I'm already out at dinner, right? I mean, there's already a reason why you might not do it.
Commitments.
So to think about that spectrum of where the audio engineer fits in is coming from an audio engineer that's like kind of, working all the time. I don't know where I fit in there at all.
It's interesting. I've never thought about that question.
I actually think the transparency issue makes mix engineers, audio engineers in general, a lot more like classical musicians.
I think so too. I think
than the crazy artist. I say crazy artist. I mean like that extremely open-minded, sort of more chaotic lifestyle.
The fountain of
a mixed business to make money and survive and be competitive at high levels. It takes a lot of rigor and structure and systems. And that to me is like really on the side of the classical musician.
Yeah, that's
There's
preparation.
rigor and preparation and reps, and it's a system, and it's made better through repetition.
But mix that with communication and boundaries, right? Mix that with, can I get that to you by Monday? Do you really need that today? Is today the actual deadline?
I think that's part of the system.
If you're okay, I think of the system as practice. I think of what you're talking about. Classical musicians, they're literally sitting on the piano or the violin on the shoulder, and they're playing for 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, because they've been doing that since they were 4.
Yeah.
The difference here is, I think after a while of your practice and you're getting regularly hired to do and perform your craft at a certain level, you can then you refer to it for me as my lazy phase. I'm still mixing hundreds of songs and I'm only halfway through the year and I have over 200 songs mixed. I have also taken every weekend off, but maybe 1 or 2 this year, and my output is still really high.
Yeah.
So it's in that, after that preparation, that practice, that you can now assess this. Now, if you want to talk about during the preparation, should you be doing this at 19, 20, 21, 22, 7 days a week?
Is a different situation.
It's a different situation.
Your biology is different. So
Exactly.
It's a different time.
I have 2 observations on the last couple of minutes of you talking.
Okay.
One is that, we talk about you. Let's say you've done 200 songs and it's the middle of the year. The idea, that is built on a foundation of monitoring you trust, a great team, session prep that's on point, good clients, great management. It's built on you've built a foundation and a framework to allow you to work efficiently. When I tell people how quickly you mix, mixer friends of mine, Grammy winning mixer friends of mine, I say, we're talking about stuff, and they're like, John can mix a song in 3 or 4 hours. No, he's phoning it in. It's bullshit. It's not possible.
No.
Mix takes, 18 days or whatever. Like it doesn't, whatever.
No, I
it
mixed
take-
one in an hour and 15 minutes
of course.
today,
I've
and
seen
it was
6.
approved on first pass.
Of course,
I've seen 6 go down while I'm like on my computer.
We know it's true.
Knowing what
Yeah.
what I have to do.
But it's not an accident. So the idea of a kid in a bad room with bad that's something I need to stop saying, with suboptimal clients, projects, young bands, or half-written songs, or poorly recorded, challenging projects. They have merit, but they're not fully realized, right? I'm going to find better language for that.
Yeah.
But the idea of a kid working in a bad room, trying to knock that out in 3 hours, like it's not
not viable.
So there, what I'm interested in is building a bridge between where you're at and where he or she might be at. So that's
and boundaries are part of that.
Well, let's stay there for a
saying.
second. Let's also clarify the fact that in this we're discussing extremes here. That's a hard day, and that's a generous producer rough mix example, right? This is not a flex by any means.
No.
Right, but we need to clarify that
Yes.
because that doesn't happen all the time. There are 2-day mixes, and it does happen. There's a struggle. Maybe there's more headroom that I can flex and do my own thing. Like there's examples.
It depends on everything.
It depends.
Yeah.
You're right, but I have been lucky enough with the 3 of you at this table in different capacities, Tony and other people that have guided me through this, right? And what you're talking about is, well, where's that gap bridge? I don't know of a specific resource, and I keep coming back to this. I think I've said it maybe 3 or 4 times this conversation, that speaks outwardly about that gap bridge. And I don't have a solid answer to it either, but I'd like to figure it out.
It's guidance and mentorship.
Yeah,
we're here to start
it's
that.
through conversation, right?
So I can do what I do because I've seen someone else do it. I've seen someone else get to a desired result because they didn't have to do any more than they did, right? And I think a lot of us think that we have so much to do.
That's part of the hard work.
I mean,
ethic.
I see it outside of music. I see it with Michael. He'll design something, and I'll say, "Yo, I love that." He's like, "Yeah, I like that too." Like, and it's done in a minute.
Yeah.
But he could have went 17 other directions.
Yeah.
And not that I'm stopping the creativity. All I'm saying is I like that one. That's sick. And if you can get to that faster, then you can have more output because it is sick. And you can acknowledge that it's tight. And I've seen it like next to him. And it's amazing because then he'll just say, yeah, that is tight. Like, what else do we got to do today?
Sounds like we're talking about how to build up someone's confidence then.
So
that's part of it.
my second observation on John's riff was this idea that maybe, if we look at one of the problems we're having, it's people. So we think of music as this church or this big community, this big space that everyone plays in. Music, the music business or music creative. There are people who don't make any money. Music, right? They play, they love it, they listen, they buy, they, whatever, record, mix, produce, songwrite, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And this thing that happens where people take stories or techniques or approaches or, attitudes from one area and, so for example, Van Gogh drank absinthe and made great art. So I should drink absinthe and mix a record. It's like, that's not
I'm going to try that.
Yeah, that's not going to work, I would bet, right? So let's say I'm a young female, super delicate, vulnerable songwriter, but I saw that, such and such a producer goes hard. He works 24 hours a day for weeks on end. That's maybe not what that artist needs. So this idea that we're sort of, in a weird way, we're advocating interdisciplinary sort of, inspiration and thieving ideas from chefs and winemakers and whatnot, artists and graphic designers. We have this interdisciplinary thing is at the table because it's important to us.
Yeah.
But in another way, it's like don't take approaches from other people that aren't useful to you, or at least try and interrogate them on the way in and say, well, maybe this works for him or her, but it's not for me. So this process of we're back to being self-knowledge, and we're back to being a weird kid and figuring out how do I...
Self-acceptance.
I'm speaking about the weird kid, and I'm 44, and I'm still the weird kid.
You're still a weird kid.
I'm still looking for the slot. And the most exciting thing that's happening in my life, in my work life, is chewing on this problem with you guys, and in various ways we've achieved things that each of us individually is proud of, but we're all aware that we have a lot more potential that we're trying to unlock. So, and what I love about what we're doing together, and hopefully as a project that we're putting into the world, is this idea of committing, sort of nakedly saying it, hey guys, I would like to be better, and I need your help. I don't know what I'm really good at. I know what I like. I know what other people like about me. Earlier when Michael was talking about the experience of doing things and getting a reaction from people, so often I've had people say, you're really good at that. And it's kind of like, okay, I guess I do that well. And it just feels like this weird anomaly, like something that I'm not really good at it. There are people who are really good at it, whatever it is. I'm reasonably good. I learn fast, and I'm reasonably good at anything. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
And people react to it. And I don't want to take that feedback and say, okay, I should do that for a living. You know what I mean? I don't want to be completely immune to it either. I want to be open to feedback, I guess, in my life. But
it's the hard work knob that, for some people, turning it up is probably good, and for some other people, it's probably pathological.
Oh, that's it.
Right? So the hard work ethos is not always appropriate. Working harder is not, it's a means to an end. You know what I mean? It's, some self-sacrifice for later reward is important. And kids who can't do that, like the marshmallow test, right? They have problems for the rest of their life, right?
Apparently, they're having reproduction problems with that experiment, which I'm curious about.
I wouldn't be surprised.
We've done it at home with Mirabelle. It's really interesting. Yeah.
The reproducibility problem aside, I think the concept is interesting because you've got, so you were talking about the positive and negative connotations of the term self-sacrifice.
Yes.
Working harder could be the thing that needs to happen, right? And there's a temporary sacrifice, and you break through to another part of the family's life or whatever it is, right? We're going to do this, and we're going to get into that house, and we're going to get the kids out of this neighborhood, and whatever it is, and you do that, and then it's over. But this sort of perpetual, if I could just work harder, if I could figure out how to work longer hours and outwork everybody else, like this is easily becomes pathological. And it doesn't seem like the audio engineering community understands this.
No, I used to make excuses why I couldn't hang out with my ex-girlfriend because I'd have to work. Like, I could have done the work the next day. And whether I wanted to see her or not is besides the point. And
well, maybe it is the point.
No. Sure. It could.
It's not the point you're making.
It's yeah. You're right. I can see both sides.
Let's call her.
But my point is, I don't know if I did or not. I was told this is what I need to do, and hearing Spider just discuss what he was talking about, simply to me that sounds like there's no one size fits all argument, right?
Yes.
There's nothing is one size fits all. Maybe a universal pair of slippers, depending on how big your feet are. Like, I don't think there's anything that's one size fits all.
I'd be interested in
the most John Castelli roadmap I've ever heard. So the secret to success is well-fitting slippers.
Well, there could be a version of slippers that expand. Anyway,
I'd be curious to see if we could identify universals for audio engineers that do apply.
Well, I bet Michael has a whole mind map of it.
This is something. Yes, I want to jump to Michael on that, but I think something that it would be nice to try and do as we riff on this stuff is to try and distill out some kind of guideline, something that we can
The engineer's bill of rights.
Well, I'm specifically, we can use, I'd like to take responsibility, and I feel like you could use me, right? I want to model this bit more normalized lifestyle, family values, things that step outside of the studio and still give my maximum potential to the work for my clients, right? Like I still want to be the greatest I possibly can and the hardest working I possibly can, but also the smartest working I possibly can. And I want to create a lifestyle that maintains health and longevity, right? So I want to consider ways to be around longer for the people that love me and rely on me. So as we riff, I will push back on things that I think all or most engineers feel that I have felt before this point in my life, because I am actively trying to switch this up.
Can we sketch an engineer who, if they did all of the things that you do that have unlocked your success, that it would, can we imagine, does it exist? Is it possible that there's an engineer who, if they did all of the things you did, would not realize their potential like you did? So is there someone who will be better if they eat badly, don't rest, don't meditate? I'm being sort of comical, but is there someone who needs a console instead of a minimal rig?
Yeah.
Who needs near fields instead of mains? Who needs a small dirty basement in Greenwich instead of a loft in LA? Or who needs to realize themselves needs something different to you. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is
it's the process of discovery there that's important.
Yes, which
finding
ties
what works
into
for you.
Your thing, and the double down on you kind of concept is this.
But communicating with other people is a universal.
Yes. Okay. So have we? Right.
This is making me slightly angry, but I want you to keep going.
Why? No, that was a hypothetical question.
Oh, I want to know what you're responding to.
I'm having a visceral response that it's okay, and you'll get your best work by eating shittily.
Oh no, I don't believe that. I'm not advocating for that.
But everything else you said, I believe completely. I think that someone does need a grimy basement to get their best work out of them.
Great.
I think that someone
that's where they're comfortable.
Yeah, I think to a degree, for some part of your life, you should know what it's like to maintain a cortisol spike and adrenalized to get through 2 weeks straight of sleepless nights.
Boot camp.
Yeah, I think you need to go through all these things. I'm saying that they don't
prove yourself.
Yeah, they don't last forever.
Yeah.
So if you want to,
it's a young person's.
If you want to map, I feel the youngest I've ever felt in so many ways, right? So I don't even want to use that term necessarily, though you're totally right, just biologically. I think that that's a temporary state, and that's why, like, use boot camp. That's why Marines go through this. They need to be held up against that.
Prove yourself to each other, to yourself.
But if that's going to be the perpetual teaching, I think there's something wrong there. So that's why it gets me a little angry.
Yes, no, I do too. It was more of a thought experiment to say that, there are things that work for different people to unlock their success. And something interesting, we've talked about more than once about me being that kid in Ireland who didn't really have access to mentors, and certainly not to big studios. And missing, not being able to find the kinds of artists whose records I was listening to record, and I remember getting a book. I need to buy it again. I gave it away to someone, but it was a book about basically interviews with producers. I think that guy Howard Massey wrote it, and it was interviews with loads of people, all the A-list producers of the era. And I remember being this kid in Ireland and looking at it and going, "This is it. This is going to have the answers. These guys make the records I love." So, and the guy, I opened up the first interview and the guy said, the first thing you need to do is A, B, and C, and you will get a hit record. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, ridiculously. And I go to, interview B with record producer I love, Butch Vig. The first thing you need to do is never do A, B, and C. That fucks records.
Yeah.
Back, flipping pages. And, you finish the book and you're like, all of these people got to records that I love in very different ways.
In ways that are contradicting each
Yeah.
other.
So that was kind of the root
It's like
of my
reading
question.
the Bible.
They contradict each other. So
Yeah.
there are people out there listening to us who are getting bad information and conflicting information. So I guess what we're drilling down to is saying, okay, forget all of that and start on a journey of realizing what works for you. So are we? That's all I've got.
But it's just, this
No,
is the
that's-
branding
yeah.
exercise, and this is like when we go to someone's studio for the first time for an unfucked consultation, right, for acoustics, we are sort of engaging in this branding exercise. We're trying to understand the person, their goals, how they fit into the community, what role they play.
Where they
it's
want to
it's
be.
Michael's
building.
branding intake.
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
aspect
it's the
of it.
branding it's sort of this branding intake exercise that we do, and that's what you find is most of the clients that we interact with, audio engineers, are not that they don't have a very articulate vision of themselves and what they're doing and where they're going, and there seems to be an intrinsic value. We're trying to get the information we need to help them make decisions, right?
They're very
there's this-
outward looking,
they're-
yeah.
and they're left with this vision now for the future that affects all the decisions they're making in their household and sort of the whole picture. And I think I'm better at doing that in the room because of the work that I've been doing with Michael on various things, from PMC, the branding exercises here for the conversation, and just the conversations we've been having for the last
I second that.
year,
That's
exploring this. I mean, but this is the core. Like, if you're a manager and you're looking at young engineers you have your eye on, this is what you're going to do. You're going to explore who they are so you can leverage their natural differentiators. I mean,
Yes.
that's just where you go.
I have a little discomfort with differentiator as a word, but we'll loop back around to it. Michael,
come.
go.
Wow, yeah.
I feel that you know.
Signifiers of uniqueness.
Well,
Like,
there's well, yeah, but it's just that what if I'm not different? What if
there's always something, man.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think
what if I don't know that though?
that
What-
was the question I struggled with for a long time, and why I didn't like the word either. But what I found was it's all of the things that might make you the same as 17 other people that you have in one person. You know what I mean? So if you're like, well, I do this,
the
but so does
combination
John.
of
I do
things.
this, but so does Spider. But Spider and John might not do that thing. You know, like they might do A, or John might do A, Spider might do B, but you might do A and
it's
B.
endless
or a
combinations.
mix of it. And so it's like, therefore it's different right out of the gate.
Hold on. I mean, that's incredible. But who is the same as someone else?
Right. Literally.
Well, no.
well,
I
people
suppose,
can be
well,
indistinguishable at a distance.
I'm conscious of.
Sure, doppelganger. Yeah.
But if we really know ourselves,
Or just
let's-
land
so
at a
we're-
distance.
We're drilling down to this process. We're advocating
bland up
for
close.
there's a 22-year-old engineer, producer, songwriter out there listening to this, and we're advocating for them to be their best selves. We want that, and we're saying, the interviews with superstar producers might not be getting you there, and the information, the ads you're seeing from UA, they might not be helping either. And the narratives about, asshole, tearaway rock stars or Picassos, that's probably not useful to you either, right? So what is? So we're saying there's a process of we're advocating for a process of self-discovery. And, we'll get into some of the stuff we've done and for in various ways for each of us, we're all taking baby steps into different aspects of this, right?
Yeah.
But what my point is that there are people who haven't yet discovered what it is that makes them truly different, or truly special. So, I can imagine a case where there is a young producer who loves the same kinds of guitar sounds and drum sounds as Sean Everett, like lives for them. That's all he thinks about.
I know that
they,
person.
They resonate for him, right?
I mentor that person.
But yeah. And so to them right now, everything Sean Everett does, eats, buys, uses, how he approaches things, they resonate with it and they're going to follow that. But we know, that once you dig in, there's something that differentiates them. There is a something that makes them unique. There's an aspect to their approach to life and that's what we want to unlock. They just might not be able to see it yet.
Yeah. And to kind of put a little bit of a point on that, where that is something that we're advocating for, but what really we're saying is that gives you your best shot.
Yes.
Right?
Of course. Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Increase your chances.
Yes.
Yeah.
All we want to get across is that's the best chance you have
Sean
to stand
Everett
out.
already occupies the
Yes.
small spot on the top of that Sean Everett mountain. So
Yes.
so you need to find your own one.
Also, let's stay on that for a second, because he's an anomaly, right?
Yes.
Lives in the neighborhood, see him all the time, walking around, pre-COVID-19, and he's a sweetheart. He makes things sound crazy. Like he has his own unique approach to things with 8 to 10 plugins on everything,
Yeah.
and he says it, he talks about it.
Yeah.
I have yet to see someone do. I've heard the chains. I know the chains. I've seen the chains, and then have heard the person say, "Oh, I did this because Sean Everett does this," and it never sounds anything like Sean Everett.
Right.
This is exactly that. The minute someone says, "I want what Sean Everett does," I do the complete opposite, and it still works because they don't want what Sean Everett does. They want the best for the song, and they
Yes.
think that version of it is going to be the best. It irks me when everyone is putting themselves up against somebody else. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
what you're saying, and I just gonna double down as far as I can, the best chance you have is to discover the most effective version of yourself. And you can align with others on influences, on sonic, in a sonic family. You can identify even with, I am someone that does this, I am someone that uses this gear, if that's going to help you tell a story of who you want to be. But
Yes.
you're never going to be that person other than yourself. So the quicker you can, I wish I was told this when I was 21, right? Versus looking up to Tony Maserati, who luckily enough but luckily is the key word here, became my mentor, but that's who I was trying to emulate for so
Yes.
much. If someone just said, like Tony said, is you have your thing, go do it, before I met him, I think I would have done my own shit more. I wouldn't have tried to copy Many More Problems bass when it's in a sample anyway, and there's nothing I could have done to get that bass anyway. Whatever.
So,
That's my rant.
to the kid in Budapest who won't meet Tony, who won't get in that room because they're home and they work in their dad's, leather shop. It's kind of questionable in Budapest, but we're trying to send that message of, okay, it seems like all voices are saying, if you buy this, if you do this, if you copy this,
Externalized.
that you will have success. We're saying no, and we know this to be true because we've been around many, many people who've tried it one way, and we've been around many, many people who've been successful by not doing that.
Yes.
So now we've stripped them of their
Illusions.
given illusions and tools, or they're not tools because they don't work.
Yeah.
But we stripped them of that sort of comfort. So we need to start from here. And this is more of a mission statement for what the podcast will be. We need to start building them up with techniques to realize their own potential.
But we got to break shit down before we can rebuild.
That's
Marine
what I'm
style.
saying.
Yeah, but that's the boot camp again.
That's why I'm wondering if all of this isn't just to drill down, like the three of you are assisting and aiding me in my journey of self-discovery, and I'm doing it for all of you guys. You know what I mean?
Completely.
Because we're talking about double down on yourself. Well, you can't do that if you don't know yourself. And so, know thyself is an idea that's been around for however many.
Socrates, I think.
I have really
this is-
uncomfortable relationships with some of the things I'm good at,
same.
and it's really interesting to have people say, you complimented me on something the other day, and it was like, it was very 50-50 for me about a
on walking through
I'm working through a
project,
memo with a client,
Yeah.
and it was very 50-50 for me because there are things that I'm good at that can sometimes feel like I'll just say it. I'm good at selling stuff, physical things. From when I was 15, I worked in bike shops. I worked in record stores. I owned a record store. I sold instruments for years.
People trust you.
I'm good at selling stuff. Now, I will only sell stuff I believe in, but there is a kind of a power that comes with being able to put an idea in someone's head, and a responsibility, and a kind of a risk, a temptation to do things you shouldn't. With that, and a sort of a shame. One of the stores I worked in when I was young, my boss was a very charming, very wonderful guy, a great boss, but basically a very shameless salesman. I mean, he would sell you a pile of shit in a bag, and just for him, it was just the kick of selling, just getting you to walk out the door with that thing. There was no thought to the utility that bag of shit would give you once you left. It was just the thrill of the chase for him. And so I have a kind of an uncomfortable relationship.
It's like an awkwardness about where the ethical line is when you're selling somebody something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, that's just one ability, right, that I have that I'm uncomfortable with. And I don't even
trust meets an agenda. I mean, you're going into the conversation with an agenda, and people trust you. And the fact that you are aware of the opportunity to manipulate, makes you not evil.
Well,
you know what I mean? That you're aware of the ethical.
I don't think that's a one-time transaction, but yeah.
But no, I mean, as a pattern.
The fact that I'm questioning it offers hope. You know what I mean? But I don't even know how we got there. Where were we coming from? Sorry, Michael.
I don't know, but I love this thread. I mean, I do. We could trace it back. I don't think we're
all of our heads.
I think we should just keep moving forward. I
think
think this idea of being uncomfortable with your abilities sounds like a plot to a superhero movie, maybe the Hulk. I mean, honestly,
you've seen my physique. You know what I mean.
I mean, you're kind of like Bruce Banner.
a slight Bruce Banner.
I mean, so there's a reason that story has lasted for so long, right?
Yeah.
He is someone that is uncomfortable with the other side of him. The things, the powerful side of him,
that
completely
he's
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He's very comfortable with being knowledgeable, being the scientist, not comfortable with being strong. And that is, when you really extract the principles of that story, that's why it's lasted so long and why they're making millions of dollars putting that in movies. But I don't know. I feel that too sometimes. I absolutely feel this, if someone compliments the work or a move or something, I'm like, oh, it could be better or whatever. Or,
I think that's
it's not perfectionism.
It's a slightly different thing, because I have that too, which is kind of like the client likes it, but I know I didn't hit the mark. That's a separate thing. That's a kind of a perfectionism.
Or is it you're afraid of what you're capable of? Like, are you afraid of your dark side, or are you guilty about being good at something or afraid that you'll be alienated because you're better at things than the people around you?
I suppose if I have a kind of if I have a fear around it, it must have come from something. I must have had experiences where I mean, I remember some experiences where I sort of charmed people accidentally, and then had to I charmed people because I was enjoying the rhythm of it. I was enjoying the jam, and then there were emotional consequences.
Sure.
There was someone who was like falling for me or something, and it was like, oh shit, no, I was just riffing, like I was just kind of enjoying the.
And she's never recovered, has she?
No, I'm not likely.
But
you know what I mean?
hulked out and woke up with as Bruce Banner with your shirt all ripped up. And, what happened?
That's kind of a dramatic painting of it, but it is.
I'm going to draw that or paint it.
It is different because the second thing you sketched is something that's familiar to me too. But there are some things that I think I'm separating things I care about and want to be good at, and feel like some people are like, you're really good at that. You're a really good guitar player. It's like, have you ever met a really good guitar player? Because I'm not him. But then there's things that you are actually genuinely good at that you're a little scared of. That's a separate thing to me. So I find that one of the things that say with you guys has happened is this kind of slightly safe space where I can accept a compliment on something. And that's an interesting...
Yeah, this mystifies me about you.
What is a solely self-deprecating point of view going to offer to others?
They might be feeling this.
It can disarm people.
I think
like,
it's
as a device, but
No. Of course, no. I'm challenging that thought. I think there are things to get from that, but
the problem is the inconsistency between the view of the like people's view of you not matching your internal view of you, and that causes problem.
I'm not advocating for this as a way of life.
Yeah, that's why I'm pushing back. I know.
Yeah, no, I sorry. I thought I was sketching it as something bad.
Yes,
This is
same.
not,
I wasn't gonna run home and feel
model this
more discomfort.
This is where
Can we model
the 22-year-old presses stop and is like, okay, I got it. Okay. I'm gonna be
That's all I have to do.
I'm gonna crush it like him. No,
moving to LA.
Well, in a sense,
this is bad.
you're. It's not solely bad.
It's me.
Yeah, in a sense, and I think I asked this question at one of the conversation nights, and I said, by a show of hands, tell me who's confident every time they send out a mix to a client,
this,
and only one person raised their hand, and that person raised their hand, and I said, "Whoa, really?" And they said, "Yeah, that's what the label or the artist or producer's paying you for the confidence that it's done." And though I completely agree with that is what they're paying for. That doesn't mean that you have to feel confident every.
It sounds like a supposed to feel confident.
But what was really great about that moment was by the end of the conversation, that person raised their hand and said, "Actually, I don't mean that at all." And it wasn't.
Great.
We weren't even pushing. I wasn't pushing back on it more than that one time that I said, "Really?" And it came up organically in the rest of the conversation that's absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're truly
You're same confident on everything
on
you
everything that you do artistically, specifically, right? Versus, I'm doing a math problem and I know the equation and I solve that equation.
Yes.
And there's only one way that equation can work.
Yeah,
Whether
right or
that
wrong.
proves a point or not is irrelevant. You solve that equation. I'm confident that it's
in it.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. I don't have that skill mathematically.
Yeah.
But artistically, everything is subjective. So you have the utmost confidence every time. Good for you. But that's what you're saying to me is that, or to us, is that there's a mismatch, like Spider just brought up, is like how people view you. And I have this thing about like yourself is a combination of your internal view of yourself and the external view of yourself from others creates your true self, because you can't know yourself
Without
external
without knowing how you operate externally.
And getting feedback from trusted sources, right?
Yeah.
So this slightly safe space, as you put it, I would like to add that this is as safe of a space that one can be. Michael and I have this saying of, can I say that at this table? You can say anything at this table, right?
Yeah.
Anything, and it will be thought through and discussed before judgment is passed, right? At all times. And I want this conversation specifically at this table to always remain that way.
Yeah.
And considering this is my home and this is my table,
You set the rules.
I set the rules.
My table, my rules. Bitches.
You must.
I
be
had this
comfortable
table
here.
commissioned.
But that
comfort.
that mismatch, that mismatch does more harm than good to the person that you're attempting to affect with your offerings. And
That's true. What was that leadership dude who was saying like your doubt gets in the way of the your leadership or
yeah, I have that
Okay,
in a
from this-
notebook somewhere.
remember this leadership
Yeah, I love that
dude? Who's
podcast.
this dude?
I have the whole note.
I can't remember.
I have
John
somebody
Maxwell.
Yeah.
John Maxwell, right?
He was on the Knowledge
It
Project.
was this whole thing about getting
It's in
your
the base
shit
camp.
out of the way.
Yes. So wait a second, John. I don't know what to
we should
take from
definitely
what you
tap
just
back
said.
there.
So let me summarize my position, which is you know, I'm a human who among other fuck ups has some discomfort with some of my abilities. And one of the upsides of hanging with you guys has been this sort of space where I feel like I can take a compliment and sort of almost just let it sit and live with it and sort of maybe integrate it and build on it. Sort of go, okay, actually, people I trust, really trust, are saying, I have an ability here. I need to take note of that.
They value.
They value it,
Yeah.
Or they can riff on it, or they can build on it, or build with it, or whatever. I think definitely sort of taking that on board is a win. It's a move forward, and that's really what you're saying too, right?
Yes.
Just that not doing that. So back to I'm trying to, you know, if the goal is to tell stories about all the mistakes we've made and all the things we got wrong or how we're fucked up, I think it'll be 3 hours, won't cover it. Yeah. But in terms of getting back to, so we're back to our young creative, self-discovery,
double down.
So, you know, there are some people that we would say we would get on the FaceTime or the Google Meet and be like, fuck what other people say. And here I am saying it's been really good for me to listen to what other people say. A very small group of people, but nonetheless to take some feedback.
Yeah, who are the people?
Who are the people? Okay, so this ties into something you said last week, Spider, which we've all done in various ways. We're doing it with Kyle. We're doing it as a collective before. You guys have done it for years. You guys have done it, pointing to John and Michael.
Yes. Kyle is a studio designer.
Kyle is
we're
part,
doing acoustics and studio design with,
And you build these sort of coalitions, these small friend groups, these almost like project-centric.
I've been calling them working groups.
Working groups, yeah. So find your working group. And that may, if you live in a small town, in a weird place, that may not be people.
Slim pickings.
It may be remote. It may be.
Yeah.
But find, I think, if we're going to give someone a takeaway, find some people you can build who will commit to this journey with you.
Invest time.
Yeah, people that you can riff with.
Find people to invest in.
Jam with. Yeah.
Invest in.
And I mean, if you're really listening to yourself, you'll know pretty quickly that these are the right people or not. And obviously, as you grow and you see what they do in their life and what mistakes they're making and what turns they're taking, you can learn from that as well. I mean, I think this podcast is the example of when you get 4 people that care about each other together talking about our discomfort in our abilities or any of the other notes that I've scribbled here. Like, that's how you're really going to grow. You're getting that immediate feedback. You're being, countered on points, right? And people are holding you to a standard to explain yourself, defend yourself, whatever it may be, right? That's how you're going to grow. I mean, so...
Yeah, through challenge and support and open dialogue.
Yeah, and they need challenge and support need to happen simultaneously.
Yes.
And I think like finding friends that are only going to support you or finding friends that are only going to challenge you is not the right thing. You want to find that cycle. And in time, you're going to have to put your own work in, obviously, but having that group of people around, even to start with one, find another.
I think for some people, selecting those people is going to be their primary challenge for many years.
Yep.
A lot of people won't have modeled those sort of healthy relationships and won't recognize them, won't know quality people that are really can unlock the thing. And so,
but that's a
very
trust.
deliberate.
That's a trust issue.
Yeah, of course it is.
And sometimes, a lot of the times it happened for me, those people found me, right? I wasn't actively searching for them and they found me. And I mean, you're one of them specifically, Spider. I always forget that we're not on video here.
It was serendipitous.
Yeah.
We didn't look for each other specifically, but I have always been looking for younger, talented people.
Sure.
Deliberately.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was open enough to accept that.
Yeah.
Right. And I did work previously on that, to be more open and more trustworthy and understand that people can have my best,
interests.
Yeah, best interests
at heart.
Can I sketch something or just a small
Please.
jumping off point.
Mhm.
What to do if this may or may not be from personal experience, what to do if your ambition is different, just different to the people you're meeting. So again, this may be more of a problem if you're in small town America or small town Europe or wherever. But this, because if you come to LA, there's no shortage of people with ambition, right? But that's something that struggle is too strong a word, but that's something that I encountered over the years where the push for better becomes uncomfortable for other people who are happy. It's like, hey, this is cool. We're playing the local thing, or we're jamming, or our record kind of sounds like a record, and you're like, nah, it's got to be better. I want to go and
it's alienating.
There's so much. It's alienating, exactly.
I mean, you want to find the person there that tells you to go. That's what you're really looking for in that situation.
Or the person somewhere else saying to come.
Or the person someone else telling you to come.
Mic drop Michael. That's
how you know.
it. Find the person who says go.
Yeah, I mean, my best friend Ross, when I told him I was moving to LA, was like the most supportive of anyone I knew at the time. Like, other than John telling me to come.
You had both of them.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's how you know. The person that tells you to make the right moves for you, not for them or their insecurities, is the right person.
That's the episode title right there. Find the person who says go.
In Prague.
It reminds me of we're talking about exceptional abilities being alienating, ambition, uncommon ambition being alienating, sort of configuration of your personality being alienating. And
are we weird?
Absolutely.
This is all that fish out of water feeling comes from this, right?
We're all people with small. Sorry, we're also people with small friend groups that found each other. We're all more or less isolated that found each other along the way. Right? That's something to note here.
We're quality over quantity, and we prefer to go deep in relationships and all that. I think like the band analogy applies to what we're doing. It's like we're sort of committed for people, committed to a project, and like we sort of go and practice individually and come back and we do this sort of ensemble thing.
And I think the better we get at that, the better we are at lending it to other people. Like I find you and I Spider, through our acoustics work with Kyle and without, we're getting better at lending that sort of mentality to other people, bringing it to them in more fully formed, more potent, more more concise in terms of asking the right questions that unlock.
We're sort of driving at memifying these ideas so that concepts can be easily learned and shared. Distilling the language down. But I bring this up because of the many ways a young developing person can feel alienated. One of those ways is to achieve uncommon things. And the problem, and this is my experience in signing my first record deal, going from the suburbs of New Jersey to New York City, doing the thing that everyone I knew wished they were doing.
Yes.
When people found out that I got a record deal, it was like 80% of the people I thought were friends, I didn't think were friends anymore. They weren't behaving like friends.
Wow.
And so instantly your social world is like upside down, right? It's rational to avoid that, right? So what does that mean about having exceptional ability and not fitting in, and having exceptional drive achieving things and being afraid of your own success.
Penalty for your ambition.
Yeah, it's a penalty of achievement. The isolation that comes from exceptional achievement.
I hadn't even achieved, but I felt, I mean, it sounds, if anyone who knew me at home was hearing this, be like, what the fuck is he talking about? Because this sounds very dramatic. But just this sort of
Well, you're a kid. I mean,
just the friction between my ambition to and then, for me it was extra complicated because of family situations. I couldn't leave my hometown. I was a kid who should have gone to London or should have come to LA or New York.
Right.
I had big ideas and then got stuck in Ireland for various reasons, until I was 34 or 5, and then we did come here as soon as it was possible,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is all part of knowing yourself, right? If you can't acknowledge your fear, that comes from accomplishment, then you could be deterred from it, like disincentivized to grow and develop and realize your potential.
Yes.
So that's part of why it's so important to be discerning about your influences and to seek out smart, wise voices, whether they be YouTube lectures or whatever the source.
Yes.
Get it and try to get it in real life.
Yeah. I'm thinking of parents who discourage their children from risky career paths because they don't want the pain that might happen, and it has a similar sort of ring to it, that sort of bad incentives.
Yeah, with pain you develop resilience, so it's gonna hurt.
Episodic pain can
It's
strengthen people, but chronic pain will grind you the fuck down.
That's something you've said before, and it's very powerful, and it's very as a parent trying to raise kids, it's just constantly on my mind of sort of pushing them, stretching them, helping them to stretch themselves, take risks, pick them up when they fall over, not coddle them, but not push them too far either. It's a tricky.
Well, when we watch movies, right, there's a shape to it. The director created an arc. So like when we're thinking about building resilience in people, it's like, we've got football, back on the football thing, we've got football seasons, right? It sort of starts, there's a calendar, you're looking ahead, when it ends, there's an arc to it, it builds, there's all kinds of excitement, stress in the body, and then it's over. And so if you can create those,
And you go into rest mode, right?
for kids, and they can see, okay, there's a ride, and we're going to go in this week and whatever,
Yes.
and then Sunday we're going to do this. And if you keep putting that ahead of kids, I think that keeps it from being this constant grind.
Yes.
It makes it peaks and valleys, and it makes it the kind of dynamic that strengthens people.
I'd love to get a guest on the show that really argues for the grind. And I'd love to challenge them and ask them questions that we don't know the answer to at all, obviously, and try to break them down.
What's our Trello note?
Who's the grinder now?
Who do we
Are people
disagree
still
with?
preaching this?
That it would
Yes.
be productive to engage with. So yeah, an advocate for the old school pay your dues grind.
Wait, what do you mean old school?
Yeah.
This is happening
Current
right
school.
now.
Well,
We're in school.
I'm characterizing it as old school because
Yeah,
to
but
me it seems archaic.
You brought up the Sunday Instagram
yeah,
post.
no, it's real.
Foot up on the
it's sort of-
console.
But there-
Working on 4th of July.
But the 4-hour work week came out
Okay.
a long time ago. There's been a cultural shift away from that
Yes.
ethic to a smarter, more sustainable way of living.
I don't know if that has hit
the
the
4-hour
music
work week
industry.
hasn't hit the mastering studios.
I don't think it's hit anywhere except Tim Ferriss fans.
Yeah.
And it's a
that's a
shame
lot of
because it's
people.
smart.
I mean, that's a best-selling book.
Yeah,
for
sure,
sure.
sure.
Doesn't mean it was adopted. It just means it was read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are other
sold.
there are other voices saying work smarter, not harder.
I want to write a book that is sold.
I just want it to be a bestseller. No one needs to read it.
And I don't even know what that means anymore in the context of podcasts and such. Best-selling books doesn't need to be that many. It's sort of like
Yeah.
CDs or something.
well,
It actually
CD.
is, and what I just heard a really interesting statistic that they like The Great Gatsby is still one of the highest top 10 selling books, but it's not on the New York Times bestseller list based on legacy, right? So it's not qualified to be on the list. But if you actually look at what's selling the most, like that book is higher than any book that's a New York Times bestseller right now. So it's based on time of release.
On new shit.
And that's like, we don't know. New York Times bestseller might mean it sold 50,000 books.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's not compared to John Grisham fiction novels that sold like 10 million. It's like Macklemore's
What are the
Thrift Shop goes
best-selling
diamond.
cassettes?
It's like no one's going diamond anymore.
Of
It's not,
2020.
so it's you know, take it all with a grain of salt. I don't know if New York Times bestseller means that's where you should get your information from.
Yeah.
And I don't.
There are some best-selling books right now that are complete garbage.
Yes.
We could save that for another time.
Yeah.
I don't know the fact that John just told about New York Times bestsellers and The Great Gatsby, right? And that is not a mixed engineer fact. That has nothing to do with engineering. But it's facts like that that then help all of us at the table understand a situation better and then make judgments on it differently.
Yes.
And moves things forward. And so what I love about all of us at this table is we're bringing in completely different perspectives, knowledge bases, putting it on the table and out there for people to listen to. And I think, to me, that's the most exciting part. And I'm going to be even more excited to see when it's out there and people are listening, what they take away from it and how they might reorient their friend group or the information they digest or, you know, the moves that they start making. So
I'll take it from there and kind of bring it home, because that's exactly what this is about. And the entire conversation long, I keep coming back to listening to you guys and thinking how inspired I am overall. Like, this reinvigorates every aspect of my intentional life. Like, when it comes to record making, like, all I want to do right now is go into a record thinking the things that we're discussing right now. And I'm going to go to sleep after this, to be honest with everybody. But
I'm glad that you were honest with us about that.
But only because I know I'm going to wake up with that same inspiration tomorrow morning and jump head in. I'm mostly inspired at the understanding that it is okay to be great, and okay to not know where you're at, not know your capabilities fully. They're not fully realized, and you haven't met that person that has told you to go. That one hit me a lot. I didn't have anybody that told me to go. I had only resistance, and I decided on my own to go. I think I would have went sooner if I had someone that told me to go. I did have someone that said come, and that helped. But I'm mostly inspired to continue this and to see, like Michael said, find those people that guide you with the right wisdom. It's kind of the only way forward.
All right. We done?
I mean, that's a conversation.
Yeah. I thought so. I think we covered some ground.
This episode of Conversations was recorded by Rory O'Flattery and mixed by Dylan Seals.